You can hit
Sitch
the button, Sitch. I'm ready to go.
Sitch is a partisan hack.
I think we've seeded enlightened centrists to Paul here. I think what are we, independents now?
Yeah, I'm starting to listen. Well, Rob convinced me. I like enlightened populists now. I'm gonna have to do it.
Oh, wow.
I recently rebranded. I'll go live.
Oh my god.
I recently.
I do.
Oh, okay. See, I like populist. I recently rebranded to far right ethno-supremacist crypto fascist, but I do like the populist label. So I think enlightened populist can work. But we'll see. We're live. Hello, everyone. I have gathered these people here today to discuss whether
to get married. What are you doing?
Oh man,
what is this?
To discuss. You see what I have to deal with. This is what I'm talking about. To discuss whether or not Donald Trump committed some terrible, unforgivable crime that would make voting for him arguably immoral. Maybe not. I think Sitch wants to come here. I talked with Rob, what was this, 3 weeks ago or something, and Rob put out this propaganda that Trump did not commit an insurrection or something like that. And Sitch wants to correct him. And then we'll figure out if any of this even matters. Because if Kamala Harris is going to tax unrealized gains, well, none of this matters because we can't do that. And you just have to vote for Trump because you can't destroy the economy for the sake of democracy. Okay? Marx was right. Economic base over whatever. Okay, so let's just clarify here. Rob, if the election were held today, who would you vote for?
Trump.
Sitch, if the election were held today and you had to vote, but you can say that you're not voting, who would you vote for?
Right. So as I said, I'm not voting, but if I had to vote, if you took a gun and you placed it squarely against my forehead and you said, who are you going to vote for? I'm going to make you vote. I would have to vote so far for Kamala.
What if the barrel of the gun wasn't on your forehead, but it's more like the handle of the gun?
Rob, I'm going to kill you.
I would do some kung fu and I would knock it out of the way and I'd punch Paul in the face.
While you're here as Sitch's +1, if you
my emotional support
today,
walls,
would you vote for Trump or Biden? Excuse me. Trump or Harris?
I mean, I haven't really thought about it. Like right now, I'm an undecided voter, but I will be voting for Kamala or Trump. So I think right now I'm kind of waiting to see what Kamala does. And, you know, obviously if she's like way crazy on the economic stuff, I'll likely be voting for Trump. But I'm leaning towards Kamala, so.
That's fair. Well-known progressive shill J.J. McCullough even admitted that Kamala Harris's economic policies are absolute bunk. So that's fair. Okay, well, let's get into this then. So people
real quick, since we're just having a conversation, who would you be voting for? Gun to your head right now.
That's a good point. Gun to my head, Trump for sure. In fact, I would probably put the gun against someone else's head and say, you're voting for Trump. No.
Is this primarily because of the wacky economic wealth tax thing?
Yeah, I don't know. Because it's a confluence of issues. Trump sucks in so many ways, and so does Kamala. It's whatever. But the point is, I would like to hear the different perspectives on, okay, Trump had this whole fake elector scheme. January 6th was an insurrection. Okay, first off, I don't give a shit about definitions per se. I care about the significance of that. So, like, okay, did Trump commit an insurrection is not the question. It's what Trump did on January 6th and all the stuff that led up to it significantly bad enough that it would make voting for him like reasonably off the table. That's more important than all these definitions and stuff. Okay, so I'll ask you, Sitch, to start. Do you think that what Trump did on January 6th and with all the fake elector scheme and all that stuff, was that bad enough where you just can't bring yourself to vote for Trump anymore?
Well, before I answer that question, I have to thank you. I have to kiss you right in the mouth for your opening right there. Because, I don't know if you remember, or if we've ever talked about it. I have something that I call Sitch's Law, which is that the majority of arguments, whether you realize it or not, are arguments about definitions.
Of course.
We always try to get around that. So I'm so happy to hear you say, I don't care about whether you define as insurrection or not. That's all pointless. That's nonsense. Let's just try to get to the concept. Okay.
Stitch, I've watched far too many Jordan Peterson lectures about philosophical pragmatism to care about definitions these days. Okay?
Right. What does truth even mean?
Exactly.
Exactly. And the reason I answered this call is I believe I saw your conversation with Rob, and you said in the conversation, you said, someone out there, please come on the show because my audience doesn't like what I'm saying and save me, tell me the other side of January 6th. And I immediately DM'd you and I said, I'm your boy. I'm your Huckleberry. So, okay. So the question, I forgot what the question was. January 6th electors stuff. Okay, you asked me, was it bad enough, right, to not vote for Trump?
Yeah.
Okay, so my position is that I think that the electors scheme was bad enough on a principle level that unless Kamala Harris rips off her skin and reveals she's a baby-eating lizard monster, that I wouldn't vote for Donald Trump on almost any grounds.
Okay, that's pretty significant.
But that could happen with Kamala, so 50-50.
It's still possible.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
now, hold on.
possible.
This is a dynamic process. Let me think. Okay, that's fair. So, okay, let me ask you this. If Trump had not, let's say January 6th and the fake elector scheme hadn't, obviously, hindsight's, you can't go back and rewrite history. But, like, theoretically, if Trump didn't do that, if Trump didn't do January 6th, and we were just looking at, like, policy, including all the other shit that Trump says and how stupid he is on Twitter and all that, like, but let's say January 6th didn't happen. Would you still be voting for Kamala, or would you consider voting for Trump?
I would be completely undecided as of now if that was the case.
Okay.
I feel like Kamala is, I don't like this sort of strategy of dodging the media that she's basically been engaged in. The strategy of being very vague and coy with policies. Like the whole wealth tax thing, it's not even clear whether that's something that her campaign supports or not. She basically just pointed to Biden's tax plan and said, I'm going to, I support this. And then that's part of it. So it's like, well, what about this specific thing, right? Or the price caps thing. Like, there hasn't been an explanation on how any of these policies would manifest or will they manifest. So.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. Yeah. We
if
can
I
get in. Well, hold on. We can get in because look, again, I'm not narrowing this to just did Trump commit an insurrection. It's a broader conversation. And we may, talking about Kamala's economic policies to balance the whole equation, maybe.
Am I going to have to stay after the show and talk to Sitch?
Rob, I'm going to come over there. Rob, you heard what Sitch said.
I did.
And do you think he's wrong? Do you think he's biased? What do you think Sitch is missing? Sitch is clearly an intelligent, nice guy. So how could he be going off the rails like this?
Well, I think there's multiple ways to look at this. First, we have to separate. I wanted to ask Sitch this question. Is it fair to separate January 6th and the riot that occurred that day from the alternate electors strategy that Trump employed? And so what I'm asking you is, let's assume there's no violence on January 6th. Would you say that just the alternate electors scheme plan, however you want to put it, would have been enough for you to reach the conclusion that you've reached?
Okay, so I should be clear. My position is 100% based on the scheme, not the riots.
All right,
okay. I actually don't think, I don't believe Donald Trump intended for there to be physical violence or a riot or something like that.
Me neither.
So obviously it's bad, and I think he could have done more stuff to stop it.
Well, and we know that there were, who was the FBI agent that was there? What was the guy's name? Rob?
Are you talking about Ray Epps, who has not been proven to be an FBI agent?
Oh, fuck.
He has not been proven.
See,
there is accusations that he was an informant or something, but he wasn't an agent.
This is why I bring you here. If even Rob is not going to say that Ray Epps was an agent, then I'll never touch that again. Okay?
Thank you.
There are other questionable things there, but
fair enough.
Got to be fair. That
fine. Okay. Then let's stick with the elector scheme for now. So Sitch is saying that it was so immoral. It was so
egregious.
It was so at odds with
democracy, freedom, the American way,
and that will, and you'd rather then vote for the person who wants to destroy our economy by taxing unrealized gains.
Maybe.
No, that's a joke. Not really though. It depends on what she actually does. Yeah. Okay. So, Rob, then why is so just if it's on the fake elector scheme,
that's fine.
Tell Sitch why he's overreacting.
Because this was a legal strategy that was employed that wasn't going to lead to the result of the election being overturned unless, when it got to the Supreme Court, there was evidence proven that there actually was theft of the election in these particular states that would have been enough to change the Electoral College. And it's not so different than, one, what the Democrats plan to do in this very election, and second, what Democrats have done in the past. In fact, the only precedent we have for sort of alternate electors in sort of the modern modern era was in the 60s with the Kennedy-Nixon election, and it actually came out in a very similar way, despite what the mainstream media has been telling people if you look into the details of it. So my question to Sitch would be, what about this process exactly do you think means that it is unforgivable to the point that there'd basically be nothing that could ever convince you to vote for Trump? What specifically is that?
So before I answer that question, you said two things, which is that if Pence had gone through with this scheme and the House had voted Trump as president and the Supreme Court had to adjudicate on it, whether there was election fraud or anything would have nothing to do with what the Supreme Court would rule on. They would only be ruling solely on whether the vice president even has the authority to do any of this in the first place. Now, I'm hoping, and I would probably think that the Supreme Court would have said no, and that would have, made Biden still win the election. So
hold on. We're
already
already into the weeds of legal mumbo jumbo stuff that does not tie in with what you were saying, Sitch, about the egregious immorality. So I'm trying to understand. Rob asked,
the JFK thing had nothing to do whatsoever with the situation. Well,
yeah, I also don't care, Rob. I also don't care about historical. Like we could, historically, it's just.
I'll tell you in plain English, Paul.
Plain English, please.
Plain English. Okay. Essentially, what happened was Donald Trump tried to throw out 7 or 8 states' entire votes because they didn't go his way, and have the House declare him president. And to me, that's a very egregious, anti-democratic, highly immoral thing for a president to attempt to do. And that's why I wouldn't, on principle, vote for him.
So okay. I think that wasn't the case. I think that the case was that Donald Trump legitimately believed that there were all sorts of things in many of these swing states that needed to be adjudicated, whether it be accusations of ballots being scanned in that were fraudulent, voting machines that were fraudulent, or in places like Pennsylvania, accusations that the laws and the way they had changed were against the state constitution of Pennsylvania, which, by the way, the Superior Court in Pennsylvania later did find that was the case, but in fairness to be overruled by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. Nonetheless, he wanted these things adjudicated to make sure the election was fair and that there was a correct outcome, because he saw it as if most of these courts were refusing to hear what he found was to be legitimate evidence. And I also think that Sitch is incorrect in that this would have just been the Supreme Court ruling on specifically whether or not the vice president had this authority. They would have been ruling on whether...
That's fine. Listen, we're
that's fine.
Listen, we are talking as if we're in a blunt rotation right here, okay? We do not need... I just want to hear... Okay, basically... All right, so you said 7 states...
Yeah.
That were thrown out. Was one of those Georgia?
Yeah. Yes.
That was
Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin.
Yeah. Okay. So one of those states was, let's stick with Georgia, because isn't that the infamous called up Brian Kemp, find me 11,000 votes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to do with this, but that was the state, yes.
But the reason he was willing to throw the state's electors out is because he believed that there was voter fraud there, right?
Correct. He thought that there was fraud or other changes in law that would have swung the election against him. And he thought that there were matters to be held through courts that needed to be heard before the election could be certified.
Do you agree with that, Sitch, or no?
Well, okay. The issue is, number one, I can't read Trump's mind, so I don't know if he
I'm not asking motivation
won the election or if he knew he lost and was just fucking around. Okay. But so since I can't read his mind, my contention is that Trump's state of mind, and whether he legitimately thought he lost or won, is completely irrelevant to his actions, right? Thanos really thought that the universe needed to be balanced when he killed half, the population of the universe. That doesn't justify anyone's action just because they think something wacky.
Yeah, well, history is written by the victor, and if Thanos had won, it'd be a different story. That's a separate debate we can have at a different time.
No, but Paul, I'm saying if Rob's position is that somehow this action is justified because Trump legitimately thought that there was fraud.
Yeah, okay, hold on. Yes, I get that. Well, hold on. We can come to that. Well, hold on. We can come to that, but I just want to clarify, because I told Rob this off the bat. I said the most egregious argument against Trump, best argument, I think, for what the January 6th truthers, I guess the left-wing ones, is that he called up the fucking governor and said, find me 11,000 votes. Like that, we have that call transcript, right? Now, I just want to understand my facts. Is that not connected to his alleged belief that there was voter fraud in Georgia, and that's why he wanted to throw. That's why Georgia was one of those 7 states that he threw out.
Well, you're conflating things, right? Because
Okay.
like Sitch
What am
says,
I conflating?
all right. So like Sitch says, it is hard. I sincerely believe that Trump to this day feels the election was stolen from him. But Sitch is absolutely correct that we can't read Trump's mind.
Yeah, I don't
so
even
you're
care about his
asking.
mindset.
Okay, so you're asking
why he made that call.
He makes this call. My explanation that I gave to you of that call was he wasn't saying I want you to make up 11,000 votes. In my interpretation, and I think the reasonable.
I get that.
But
I get
okay,
that.
so let me finish real quick. You have to. So given my interpretation, is part of his rationale for why in Georgia he didn't want those electors certified because he thought there was fraud there, and that would be part of it. Yeah, I would say it's fair to intuit that would be part of what he's talking about.
All right.
But again, it's hard to read his mind and know
Fair enough.
specifically.
I'm just trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together so I understand what we're looking at. Okay, so let's stick with Georgia. So let's go with Sitch's view of things. So Sitch, you are saying that whether or not, okay, so the mail-in votes came, they declared Biden the winner, 4 days later or whatever, and Trump is like, no, not possible. And then so he gets with his lawyers and says, what do we got to do to fucking overturn this? And is it Eastman who comes up with the legal theory, or whose fucking legal theory is this?
It's Eastman. Well, he's the one that pushed it. Yeah.
Okay, so is Eastman Trump's lawyer, or what is Eastman to Trump?
I don't know if he was Trump's personal lawyer or if he was in the Justice Department.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Look at these guys. All they fucking do is argue, and then the true centrist asks one simple question, and we don't even know. Okay, so could Eastman be considered Trump's legal counsel?
Yes, that's fair. And I don't think he was part of the Department of Justice. I believe he was independent legal counsel for Trump. But don't quote me 100% on that. But I think Sitch would agree. I think it's fair to say that he was Trump's legal counsel, even if he did have
He was acting as his lawyer, obviously. In this
Right.
Okay, fair enough. For this kangaroo court, that's sufficient for my threshold of evidence. We agree that Eastman was operating as Trump's legal counsel. Okay, so Trump was. Do we have any evidence of communication between Trump and Eastman, or
There's
any of Trump's and lawyers?
So much evidence, yeah.
Okay, that would indicate that Trump knew, hey, there's no voter fraud here, but we just need to come up with a case.
Well, there wasn't. I don't believe there's evidence of Trump ever saying, "I know there's no voter fraud," but there's evidence of this entire elector scheme plot being discussed by Trump, by Eastman, by other people.
Okay.
They've all witnesses testified to the conversations.
Okay,
This is a memo and all.
Yep.
Plus, there's memos. There's at least 2 prominent Eastman memos that discuss.
So let me ask you this, Sitch and Rob. I want you as the counterbalance if Sitch goes off the rails here.
I think I weigh more than him. So
That's fair. There's an atom there on the side that can jump on Sitch's side.
Okay, thanks.
The Eastman memos. Okay, I've heard of these. I don't know much about them, but Sitch, what is the most egregious 1 or 2 points from the Eastman memos that would support your perspective that Trump obviously was committing fraud here or doing something deeply immoral?
So the idea, Eastman's idea here was that he came up with this wacky idea that the vice president has the unilateral power and authority to essentially throw out slates of votes from any state for basically any reason.
This is an unheard of legal this is an Eastman novel theory.
I don't know if anyone had ever come up with this before or not. He was the one pushing it. I don't know. I don't know if he originated the idea or not. It's never been something that's ever been tried ever since the country's been founded. It seems obviously preposterous that anyone would think that the founding fathers imparted the vice president the authority to just throw out entire states' votes when the entire founding of the country was trying to protect centralized power from not becoming a king and all this stuff. Okay. So he basically argued the vice president has this authority to just throw out votes. And on top, so what they wanted to do was they wanted to have these alternate or fake electors, these completely fake electors that were not signed off by the governors of the states, that every single person on earth who knew that these were not the real electors for these states, the legislatures never signed off on them, they wanted to give those to Mike Pence, and Mike Pence would look at them and pretend that they were real, or that he couldn't tell the difference. He'd be like, well, I have these 2 slates from Georgia. I don't know which one's real, so I guess we're just going to have to throw them both in the trash can and have the House decide.
That sounds like clear a lawyer just manipulating shit just to get his fucking way and help out his mob boss Trump. So Rob, What in Sitch's characterization do you take issue with?
Well, first, several things I would take. First, the fact that this possibly was novel on the part of Eastman. I don't believe that. In fact, one source you could go to prior to this even coming to fruition was Van Jones. Van Jones of CNN actually put out a video where he talked about, wow, I was surprised when I looked at the constitutional process that one thing's possible is that there could be sort of alternate slates of electors and then the vice president gets to choose. This is further buttressed by the fact that they actually passed a law afterwards during the Biden administration that clarified that the vice president doesn't have this ability. Now, what we're talking about is potential legal theories. You might not like that legal theory or not, but that's what this was a legal theory in challenging what they believed is potential fraud. If the law had to be, real quick, let me finish. If the law had to be changed, and we had people prior to this talking about how this was a possibility for either side to do, and I'll say real quick, Democrats planned this out with people like John Podesta and the Transition Integrity Project, that if they won the popular vote but lost the Electoral College, they would do the same thing. They would have alternate slates of electors. This is clearly a theory that had been thought of before, and as such, it should be treated as a legal theory that possibly you didn't like, but not some coup or some attempt to steal the election.
Okay, so I'm unfamiliar with Van Jones' comments on that, so I don't know. I'd have to see what he said specifically. Passing a law afterwards doesn't prove the legitimacy of it. It just means that there's a loophole, and they're like, oh, we need to close this loophole for this.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on. And Rob, have you smoked weed in a blunt rotation before, or are you a clean Christian?
I've ran for Congress. One of my said, yes, I've smoked weed in a blunt
rotation. All right.
No, I'm an asthmatic, so it have killed.
Shorten your. This is not blunt rotation vibe. Okay.
Okay.
You need quicker. I just want to answer my questions and go from there. Okay. Because this is now the key point here. Was this a complete fucking made up lawyer bullshit? We're just trying to get Trump elected thing.
Well, wait a minute. Can I interrupt you, Paul, for a second?
Is there reason to believe that this was legal precedence? Okay, go ahead.
For your purposes, does it matter? Does like the morality of the action matter about whether Eastman concocted it on his own while smoking a fatty, or whether he read about it in a dusty tome from 100 years ago?
Assume that the reason I am asking the questions is because I'm genuinely trying to understand this as best as I can, and you two are the best sources of information I have at hand. Okay. So the reason, hold on. And first off, is this different from independent state legislator theory, or is that the theory that we're talking about?
This is different from independent state legislature theory.
All right. That's important because that definitely has
this has nothing to do with
legal support. Okay. Fair enough.
Okay.
So if Eastman is cocking this shit up with Trump and making this shit up, then okay, that's problematic. But let me ask you this, Sitch. If Eastman genuinely believes in the validity of his legal theory, and he's genuinely like, look, this shit works. Like you said, he's hitting the blunt, and it seems to come to fruition. There's all kinds of new legal theories that are novel the first time they come out. Couldn't it be reasonable that he was like, this is actually the right thing to do, and this is not some deeply immoral scheme?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of issues. Number one, Eastman himself said that he thought if this went to the Supreme Court that they would lose 9-0. So that sort of indicates that he thought this was like a pretty wacky idea that didn't really hold up legally.
Okay.
He was banking on the fact that maybe the Supreme Court wouldn't hear it, which seems kind of ridiculous. I don't know what the fuck that. I don't even know how he could even say that. But.
Was his rationale? It's going to go 9-0 to the Supreme Court, but in the meantime, we'll be able to count up all the fraud. Because if there was fraud, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is they delay the vote counting. That was Trump's goal and Eastman's goal. So if they delay the vote counting, then they have time to go back and check and see if there was actual voter fraud, right? Because
that wasn't the plan.
That was not the plan. Eastman,
that was mentioned in Eastman's second memo that was part of the plan.
All right, he has receipts.
So that wasn't. There were like 20 billion different plans that they were throwing to see what would stick at one point near the end. The electors scheme plan had nothing to do with buying time, because essentially what the plan was that the House would just deem Donald Trump the winner. At that point, the Supreme Court either overrules that or doesn't, and Donald Trump remains to be the president. It doesn't matter if they find fraud.
Because it was the alternate slate of electors.
Nothing to do with anything.
Right? Because it was just, if we use the alternate slate of electors, then Trump will just win.
No. So the purpose that Eastman won the alternate slate of electors to function as, it was just to give Pence the excuse to pretend like he didn't know which slate of electors was real,
Right.
so that he could throw them away. And then if he did
do a
that
recount.
if he did that for all these 7 or 8 states, there wouldn't be enough electoral votes to determine who the president was. So the House would essentially have to vote on it. There were more Republican states than Democrat
interesting.
states.
And
So
did
they would
Eastman
vote
make this
Donald Trump for
explicit?
president.
Rob, is this
Eastman does suggest multiple avenues that they could go, but I think, as Sitch has already said, I think that it's quite clear that Eastman knew that this would eventually end up in the Supreme Court. Eastman also says in his second memo, this was a likely outcome. I'll read it verbatim if you like. VP Pence determines the ongoing election challenges must conclude before ballots can be counted, and adjourns the joint session of Congress, determining that time restrictions on the Electoral County Act are contrary to his authority under the 12th Amendment and therefore void. Taking the cue, state legislators convene, order a comprehensive audit investigation of the election returns in their states, and then determine whether the state of electors initially certified is valid or whether the alternate slate of electors should be certified by the legislator. Exercise authority directly from Article 2.
what does that mean in plain English?
What he's saying is he would ultimately say, hey, because there's alternate slate, there are a time frame of what the law says of when these electors need to be counted, need to be put forth. And so what he's saying is, oh, because there's multiple slates, the vice president says, I can't pick from these slates. And so therefore, we're going to say that it's contrary to think that we have to follow this schedule, this timeline. So we have to put the timeline on hold until we go back to each of these states and adjourn whether or not there was actual fraud that occurred in these states. So it's basically, he's saying here, we want to delay the usual time frame so we have enough time for these states to look into accusations of fraud.
Okay, Sitch, do you want to say anything to that? Because otherwise, I have a.
So again, in his second memo, I don't know which part you're looking at specifically. In his second memo, Eastman basically, and I could give it to you if you want, Paul. He basically throws out like a bunch of different. He even calls it wargaming the alternatives. He just throws out a bunch of different possible scenarios, and like in this scenario, Biden wins. In this scenario, Trump wins. So he's just kind of like throwing out a bunch of different things. In his first memo, which is what Trump seemed to be operating under when he was like, I want Pence, he said in his speech, I want Pence to, do whatever he wants Pence to do, was that he wanted Pence to throw out the votes, which would basically make it so that the House would vote Trump to be the president. So I don't believe
that
this
seems
idea.
fucked up.
I don't believe this
up.
concept of like Pence is going to throw out the votes and then somehow magically there's going to be like a period of time where extra fraud claims can be investigated.
I think that what goes wrong with this, it is absolutely true that he outlined scenarios where this could go just to the House and they would be able to vote. And the idea was there would be, if it went to the House or the states, there would be more Republicans in the House or more Republican states that Trump would ultimately win. But ultimately, these are still legal challenges in ways that we've seen done many times in the past. Similarly, it would be like saying the attempts to keep Trump off a ballot. I could think that's scummy. And let me say, for the record, I'm not a fan of the Eastman strategy here. I think it's scummy. I just don't think it's unforgivable. I think it's par for the course in Washington.
Interesting, Rob, because...
So if I could just finish that point real quick.
Yeah.
So it would be similar to trying to use Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to keep Trump off a ballot in a state like Colorado. I think that's scummy. I argued against it. I thought that it was a double standard. But I don't think that anyone that pushed that, it would be verboten to ever be able to vote for them again, because that's like
okay. See, that's interesting, because I would call those people communists, right? The people that said we're going to use some legal mumbo jumbo to get Trump off the ballot in certain states. I'd go, I don't care that that's some, well, legally, it's like, no, that's, what is it? Letter of the law versus spirit of the law. Mm-hmm. Letter of the law, oh, technically we can do this. We got him on technicality. Spirit of the law is you anti-democratic communists. So it's interesting, Rob, that you have, it appears that my attitude towards the communists who tried to get Trump off the ballot is the attitude I should have towards Trump doing this fucking, well, we'll just send it to the House and then the people won't vote. Because if it was
it's a wash, right? So this wouldn't factor into the vote whatsoever. If I'm trying to convince you to vote for Trump, I'd say Democrats are just as shitty. So let's look at their policies.
You know what? Fair enough. The entire apparatus is filthy and needs to be overthrown in a centrist revolution. That's not what we're talking about here, though, although I do believe that. And Jocko Willink should be the president. But okay, so it sounds like, okay, I see where this legal stuff is going. Here's the more prescient issue is Let me ask you this, Sitch. This is a good hypothetical from Pine Creek Doug. If anyone is familiar with Pine Creek Doug, he's the only person that beat Andrew Wilson in a debate. And Andrew Wilson can bitch at me if he disagrees.
You missed my debates with
Doug, I haven't seen your debates with Andrew Wilson. What have you debated Andrew Wilson on?
gay marriage.
Really?
Yeah. Andrew will tell you the first
I
time
destroyed Andrew Wilson on gay marriage, so I don't
Well,
need to
then
watch
he's
your debate,
well, there you go.
Right.
He wasn't the only
Well,
one.
other than me, obviously. I've defeated Andrew every time we've talked because he gets into his presuppositional nonsense. Anyway, someone clip that and send that to him, please. Sitch. If there, let's say hypothetically, there was voter fraud to the point where it would have tipped the election, we can imagine a universe where that's true.
Right.
Where the accusations that the Republicans made are actually true. Would what Trump did have been moral and justified?
So, how do I know there's voter fraud? Do I have a crystal ball? Is it like public knowledge? Like,
Yeah,
how
let's say I don't know how it all works, but let's say someone came to Trump and said, and maybe the video footage was like real or whatever, just like, hey, there is overwhelmingly solid evidence that voter fraud was committed. And if we just let the election go through as is,
If you don't mind, I have a better hypothetical that's actually possible, if you like. What
okay,
if
you're on thin ice, but go ahead.
There we go. What if these challenges in Georgia that are currently ongoing, what if they prove that actually the state of Georgia went the wrong way? Like there's a court hearing that comes out next week, and this is proven. They get access to these tens of thousands of ballots that they're looking at, the digital scans that they're claiming were fraudulent, and it's proven that that's the case. If that's the case, Sitch, and we now know you would accept this court's ruling that actually Georgia at least was stolen, do you have the same opinions on this potential strategy of Trump's?
See, I'm trying to think. It'd be difficult. Like,
Listen,
if
you
it
can
was
take your time answering this. This is
right.
the channel
No, it is
for
an
pondering.
interesting question. I would have to think about it for a while. My intuition, it's funny, my most conservative trait is that I'm very, very like high order in terms of following rules. And I've given Al Gore a lot of credit for the fact that it seems like he got pretty gypped in 2000, but he said, listen, the rules are the rules, and I'm going to just follow the rules. The country staying together is more important than me fighting this, and he did. And so my intuition is that even if, like, January 5th, there was a news report that said, oh, there's a bunch of election fraud in Georgia, blah, 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 blah. That's like, well, that's really fucked up. And we should definitely 1,000% investigate it and arrest everyone involved. And if it turns out Biden or his campaign is involved, impeach his ass, throw him in jail. But the rules are the rules. This is the way it functions. Just because someone maybe cheated doesn't mean that you get to turn around and cheat back. That's my position on it.
Okay. I respect that intuition. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, if I could respond, I would say, but I don't think what they did was, if now we're talking about technicality of the rules, I don't think wargaming potential legal strategies, particularly when they didn't come to fruition, like who would be the person, like, I think this is an interesting question for you, Sitch. Like, at what point couldn't Trump theoretically come up with all kinds of potential shit? But until Mike Pence acts on it, why would it be illegal or against the rules? And in fact, why wouldn't it be Mike Pence then the one that aggrieved? Shouldn't Trump and his lawyers be able to talk about, like, with your lawyer, you could talk about any kind of potential scummy shit. That itself isn't against the law. It's once it's enacted, correct?
Yeah, well, no, because if this was just like a situation where Trump was just talking with his lawyers about, what can I do to stay in? They just proposed these alternatives, and Trump either said, okay, I'm not going to do that, or just said, okay, I'll think about it, and then nothing happened. Then, yeah, none of this would matter. We wouldn't have this conversation. But he did try to do it. He literally went to Pence and said, I want you to go do this thing. He said it privately, and he said it publicly. That's an attempt. So I don't know how you can say that this is just wargaming, because it's not.
I think let's lock in our gains here for a moment. Okay. I tend to view the world in terms of temperaments and philosophical. Everyone plays their own class, right? Everyone has a different role, right? And Sitch just explained how he's very order sensitive, and that's why he has the intuitions he does.
I'm a holy paladin, obviously.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Rob is a brewmaster who fucking rolls people over and blows them up and fights for American freedom with it.
Neutral barbarian? Can I be that? A brewmaster?
Do you not play Warcraft?
No!
You don't want to be a panda?
No, I mean, dude, I played Warcraft 2. I'm 40.
Hold on. need to take a breath here.
He left.
Okay.
Oh my God.
All right, Rob, I'll bring you back on.
What happened?
I kicked him off because
He's
Oh.
not played Warcraft. You
What? That's a little harsh.
Hey, I'm back.
Okay. Rob.
I'm downloading World of Warcraft as we speak, so I'm not a nerd anymore.
Okay,
You're Horde, right, Paul?
point
Horde
is-
for life?
I am a rogue mage. That's my meme smithing is
A
rogue,
rogue
mage.
mage? What does that mean?
I don't know. It's fucking like Sylvanas or something. I don't know. Listen,
This is falling apart.
He's a faker. He's a faker.
this was never put together. Okay, listen, hold on. So, we'll lock in our gains. Okay, I wanna ask a different question because really there's a lot going on. Sitch,
Yeah.
to all the cringe leftists who say that January 6th, that Trump incited January 6th as part of his fake elector scheme, would you say they're wrong?
So, what I think Trump's thought process is that he wanted Pence to use the alternate elector, he wanted Pence to throw out the votes and kick it back to the House. And he wanted there to be a big crowd of people out there to kind of point to and be like, okay, this is the electorate. This is the electorate. These are the people that will vote for you in the future. And it's like a kind of a show of political force, not physical force, political force to try to pressure Pence and the Republican Party to do what he wanted.
But breaking into the Capitol was not, you don't think it was ever part of Trump's plan?
I don't think that was ever I don't think it was his intention. I think he might have not given a shit once it happened, but I don't think it was his intention at all.
Okay, so just to be clear, are the people who say, because I believe there are people who say that Trump instigated January 6th so that he could, force Mike Pence to stop the elector thing or whatever. You think that's an exaggeration?
When you say instigate, you mean like he wanted people to break in the force?
Yeah, part of Trump's plan was if he can rile up his crowd to go fuck with Pence to make sure that they can't. Because weren't they counting the votes? Isn't that what happened on January 6th? That was what was going on, right?
Yeah.
There are leftists, cringe leftists, I might add, unlike good leftists, because there are good leftists, some of them. The cringe leftists say Trump wanted the violence on January 6th so that the vote counting would stop in order to get his fake elector scheme moving. And you don't believe that's the case based on your reading of the evidence?
Well, there's two things. Number one, I believe Trump has said he wanted like 10,000
Patriots,
militia or state police, or he wanted like 10,000 army people. He wants some like 10,000 law enforcement people to be there that day. And that wouldn't make sense if his plan was for like a mob of people to break in the building, unless he thought the law enforcement would like take a side, which seems kind of absurd. So
is that where are you getting this 10,000?
So it's both kind of buried deep within the January 6th report, and also came out more recently, where I forget who, maybe Rob knows. They asked someone, and they said, "Oh yeah, they testified that Trump had asked for additional security on January 6th and had been turned down."
He didn't. So I forget the name of the gentleman, but the story as I go, and Sitch, you tell me if you think I'm wrong about this, was he didn't file like an official request, but he sort of opined and was like, hey, we need security there. And I believe the rationale he gave was he was sort of afraid that lefties would come and fight his people. So he's like, we need people there to protect my supporters. And I think Sitch is making the point, if that's true, if you secretly plan for them to break in and use attempts at physical violence at Mike Pence, why would you request additional law enforcement? That seems nonsensical.
Interesting. And why was Ray Epps there? That's the real question. But we won't get to that.
That would be less. There are better questions that I ask about Ray Epps, such as what's up with the pipe bomb? Because let me be clear, to throw a bone to the crazy lefties out there, if that was a group of Trump supporters that intentionally planted a pipe bomb, that's serious shit. Like, that's no joke.
Sure.
That's different than a riot that gets out of control. But that seems to be the one question that the January 6th committee, including Benny Thompson that led it, has no interest in covering. They don't know even the base level facts about it. And there's plenty of weirdness that's coming out about those pipe bombs that they seem to not care about.
Okay, let's get to this other part of this whole equation, which is whether or not now, Sitch, you said the state of mind that Trump was in, whether or not he believed he lost is not relevant. You sort of made the Thanos argument. I'm not so sure of that. Intent is important. I'm not some sort of DEI woke mind virus person who says,
Systemic racism.
yeah, or not, or that you can be racist without being intentional or whatever, like a microaggression. Like if never mind, I don't want to go on a fucking rant. Intention matters, okay? Unlike what the woke DEI will tell you.
Sorry, keep going.
Pandarian Brewmaster. That's a very Pandarian Brewmaster thing to do.
Pandarian.
I heard from vaguely paying attention to leftist streamers that Bill Barr told Trump to his fat orange face that there was no voter fraud. Is that true?
So, it's actually pretty interesting because Bill Barr came onto Trump's team being like super Trump simpy, and then he ends up leaving because he's like, this January 6th stuff this election stuff is kind of crazy. And so Bill Barr does tell the story where he says, I think he says he was on, I don't know if he's on Air Force One or something. He's having some meeting with Trump, and Trump is like, here are all these claims of election fraud that Trump's basically read off of the internet. And this is, I think, something that's kind of important is that people assume, and I understand why, that when Trump said there was election fraud, he's the president, he has extra information that people don't have. That wasn't the case. He was basically just operating off of the same social media information everyone was at the time. And he kind of went through, I think Bill Barr says he had like a list of like 15 or 20 different things, and he kind of goes through them all. And Bill Barr debunks them all to Trump's face. And then when he gets to the end of the list, Trump just kind of goes right back to the beginning. He just kind of like repeats the cycle. This is what Scott Adams calls the laundry list thing. It was at that point that Bill Barr kind of said that he thought Trump was unmoored from reality and essentially quit because he thought this election fraud stuff was out of hand.
Rob, what do you think of that?
Well, two things. So Bill Barr ends up saying he didn't like this, obviously, but he said that he didn't think there was inherently any problem with appointing an alternate slate of electors, but he thought that having Pence change it would have been crazy. So I'm
talking about the fraud. I'm talking about
that's my
argument. Fraud.
Yeah.
So, but that seems to suggest that like the idea that this was some like illegal coup seems to be sort of nonsense. Trump can ask Pence just like he could ask Bill Barr, "Hey, you think this is shit?" Blah blah blah, and Barr could say, "Nah, it's crazy." That doesn't mean that what Trump did in this appointing the alternate electors is illegal or was something that means even taking illegality out of it was some sort of coup. Now, to Barr specifically, yeah, it is true. And by the way, I sort of agree with this. The problem, and I spent a lot of time after the election, 99% of claims that you hear about voter fraud are easily provable bullshit. That's just true. And you mentioned Scott Adams, Sitch. You would know Scott Adams talks about this a lot as well. Even if there is significant fraud, that still will be that the majority of claims you hear are bullshit. They just are. One of them that was banted around was that the Navy SEALs were in Germany fighting the mercenaries paid for by Dominion servers. Like, I had a local Emmy award-winning journalist repeat that on my radio show. That's insane. Like, bullshit. It's clearly bullshit. So I think that Trump probably was repeating a lot of bullshit, but I think that Trump was also getting credible information, which is outlined in the Eastman memo, and that he thought that maybe Barr was saying, I don't agree with this, but from people that were saying, like Eastman or Jeff Clark, that were saying these are potential problems.
All right, hold that blunt.
One more quick thing with
Rob,
like, literally at one sentence. And I think Barr clowns himself later by saying we looked into all these allegations, and that's clearly not true, as the ongoing case in Georgia proves. They didn't really look into it like they were implying to Trump.
Okay. Rob, what specifically is the best evidence that you think Trump could have seen that would have reasonably convinced him there was a high likelihood of voter fraud at the time?
I would say that the lack of chain of custody of ballots in places like Georgia, or in a place like Pennsylvania, the questions of the legality of the changes in laws, and I think it was Act 77, that massively changed how Pennsylvania voted, and whether or not that was within the state constitution of Pennsylvania, which again, the Supreme Court later agreed with him, or the Superior Court of Pennsylvania later agreed, only to be overturned later by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So those things, I think, it's not proof positive, and I think that Trump goes too far when he says, I absolutely have seen proof of fraud, or says but there are certainly questions that need to be adjudicated that I believe to this day haven't been investigated to the fullest extent.
Okay. Sitch, it sounds like if the Pennsylvania, was it Superior Court or What was
I believe
court?
it was Superior Court. I believe. Don't quote me. A mid-level court overruled, and then the highest level of court in Pennsylvania later overturned
Fine.
that.
What was the mid-level court called?
Superior, I believe.
Okay, the Superior Court for now. It's like I said, kangaroo court. We have minimal thresholds of factuality here. So a court, presumably an American court, and we live in a democracy which is sacred, and therefore all courts are correct all the time. But a court agreed, at least at first, with this possibility of voter fraud for some what was it, legal, or what was the fucking chain of command thing?
The chain of custody ballots, that's different. That's in Georgia. So Pennsylvania court case that I'm referring to had to do with whether or not the Pennsylvania Constitution allows mass mail-in voting.
Okay, that. So if reasonable people could have said, hey, what's this shit going on in Pennsylvania, Sitch? Could it not be conceivable that Trump would have looked at that and gone, the Pennsylvania court says, I mean, you're a technicality guy, Sitch. So if the Pennsylvania court is not playing by the rules, isn't it conceivable that Trump could have looked at that and been like, fuck this?
So first of all, again, I'm not a technicality guy. I'm a order guy. Okay, I'm the holy paladin. So I like kind of in terms of the intent. I guess we get to the question of, when does it become willful ignorance? Because I mean, I don't know if you've watched a lot of South Park, Paul. There's a good episode of like where Cartman steals the gay fish joke from Jimmy, and he basically he convinces himself that he made it up, and he honestly believes it. And you're like, okay, well, like, so is there a situation where Trump could have just convinced himself because he doesn't want to believe that he lost the election? Sure. Does that justify what he's doing? No, of course not.
I agree.
Because and this is where I'm saying, like, the willful ignorance of it is that, you have a situation where Bill Barr, Trump's attorney general, tells him that they don't find any evidence of election fraud. You have, I believe, basically every single White House lawyer and White House counsel tells Trump that they didn't find any election fraud. You have the entire Justice Department tell Trump they didn't find any election fraud. The only people that are telling Trump that there's election fraud is, Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, Sidney Powell, the Kraken lady, Rudy Giuliani, who's just basically being a stooge at this point, and Flynn, I think. These are the only 4 people that are telling Trump that they know, and I think his son, maybe, Donald Trump Jr. is probably saying this, are like saying that there's election fraud. Everyone, all the lawyers around him are like, there's no election fraud that we've ever found. So you get to this point where you're like, okay, well, he can find someone that tells him there's election fraud and just believe it, but to me, that doesn't justify anything.
That's fair. I actually think that's a fair point. It really doesn't. However, I think that just because someone's telling you something doesn't mean that necessarily that you should be believing them. But the question is, when it comes to Trump's intent, did he believe there was fraud? I think it's undoubtable he believed it. And I think millions of Americans continue to believe it. And the fact that Bill Barr and them are saying, no, trust us, we looked into all of this and we didn't see anything, I think is laughable in his face. Again, seeing what we're seeing in ongoing trials that are occurring in Georgia right now. So, for example, there are filings in the Georgia case going on right now, just looking from Rasmussen, that's been one of the only places reporting this. From the filings, there was a forensic audit blocked in the 2020 election in Georgia. 20,000 ballot images have vanished. 13 election routers have vanished. 10 Dominion tabulators have vanished. 148,000 Fulton City mail ballot signatures were unverified. The same thing happened in Pennsylvania. So what I'm saying is, like, just Bill Barr saying, no, trust us, we looked into this. Sitch is saying, well, he should have just taken Bill Barr at face value and said, oh, that's the end all be all.
Well,
I think
Bill
he's
Barr and all of his other lawyers.
Well, there were certainly a lot of other lawyers that were saying this as well, but he had lawyers like Eastman and Jeff Clark, in addition to people like Mike Lindell, that were telling him, no, there are things that are going on here that seem to be fraudulent or that are questionable that deserve to be looked into.
It sounds like we have a classic he said, she said situation here, where Eastman said this, Bill Barr said that, and Trump, the protagonist of the story, had to make up his mind. I agree with you, Sitch. People can convince themselves of all kinds of fucking bullshit. Joffrey convinced himself what did Cersei say to Joffrey? The truth will be what you make of it.
Right.
Disgusting. That did not, just because Joffrey was lied to about how truth works, does not mean his death was any less satisfactory when his purple plum head exploded, so on and so forth. I guess here's the thing, because let me put this in the bigger frame. There are people who I will not name names, who say that this is so black and white, the January 6th insurrection thing, that anyone who even disputes that it was an insurrection is a fucking idiot. Now, based on how this conversation has gone for the past 48 minutes, I could make a joke about how we are idiots, but I won't. Clearly there's nuance here. We're getting to some sort of fundamental issues of, can someone be willfully ignorant, so on and so forth. Sitch, do you think that after having listened to all this conversation, if someone walks away from this and goes, I get Sitch's point, I kind of get Rob's point, ultimately what's going on here is not significant enough for me to not vote for Trump? Do you think that that's an unreasonable position to have?
There's a couple of things here.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the intent first, because
Okay.
the part of the reason I just don't feel like the intent matters so much in this situation, besides the fact that we can't read Trump's mind, obviously, is like if a cop says, "Hey, stop," I'm going to like question you, right? And you know that you haven't done anything. Does that give you the right? I mean, or should you just like start resisting arrest? Should you start like pushing the cop?
I agree with
right?
you on this point.
Or should you just do what they say because that's the law, and then you get it worked out, legally afterwards? Like, and it's the same. And even with a more extreme example, it's like if you're tripping balls and you think Adam is like an alien who's going to eat, your children, and you pull out a gun and then shoot him, like just because you honestly believe it the second, that doesn't justify the action.
What if? Okay, but let's use that hypothetical. What if someone else gave you the mushrooms?
Well, then you'd both be culpable. I would say.
Would you? If someone
maybe mushrooms is a bad example because I feel like in an altered state, like you might be less culpable than Trump is presumably.
Yeah, and Trump
But
definitely.
like, let's just say like, okay, there's a good, there's an example of like an Uber driver who like went to someone's house and the person thought that this person was like threatening their family and they just killed them, even though it was an innocent Uber driver. All right. It's like just because like that doesn't let like say, oh, well, I guess it's fine that they just murdered someone because they had like the wrong idea in their mind, right? It might change like whether it's manslaughter versus murder and all these things, but it's still wrong, still an immoral action to do this.
If I can
go ahead, Rob. I'd like to hear your response to this.
I'm actually surprised and actually find it welcome that Sitch is saying sort of the intent doesn't matter. One brief thing I would say on that though is, did you notice when the hypothetical came up of if the Georgia case is adjudicated a different way? To Sitch's credit, he sticks to his guns and says still, even then, he would think what Trump did was wrong. But notice that it made it more difficult for him. And that seems to me to speak to that intent would matter to some degree. So if Trump legitimately thought it was stolen, I think even Sitch would have to admit that makes it less egregious than if he knew it wasn't stolen and went through with this anyways. Would you agree with that statement, Sitch?
Well, I wouldn't, because it's not in the hypothetical. It's not a question of intent. It's a question of, is there evidence to show that anything was actually happened?
Well, there's evidence that he sees that wasn't resolved, right? And so whether or not he may
that doesn't matter to me. The hypothetical was, is there evidence that like everyone in the country sees shows that there was some shenanigans, and we all agree and say, okay, that looks like this state was stolen. That's not a question of Trump's intent at that point.
Well, to me, though, the question that would be important, the reason that you say, well, it would be a little more difficult for you to decide if we determine that actually Georgia was stolen and it went the wrong way, that would imply to me that you would then have to say, well, then if there was a time frame issue and Trump thought there was a legitimate chance that that would be the case, but he had to file some sort of time frame issue because the problem that we haven't talked about, Jung, is what happens.
What did you call me?
Jung? Am I wrong about that? What do you want to be called, Paul?
PF Chang.
Jung? PF
I'll
Chang.
take Chang over Jung.
Okay. Anyways, Paul.
Jesus
I try not to use people's real names because I never want to accidentally like dox someone if I know their name. Like if I knew Sitch's real name was Bob Smith, like I wouldn't want to be like, come on, Bob. So anyways, Paul. What was I saying? What? God damn it! Now I've lost my train of thought.
This is Rob doxed me on stream, everybody.
There it is.
This is part of the blunt rotation, Rob. This is what makes these conversations great. Is we're not here to fucking bitch and argue like a bunch of lawyers. We're here to smoke weed and find out the truth, man. Okay?
One of the things we're talking about is if there are certain time frames that you have to meet, what happens if it turns out 5 days after that time frame, oops, we found out that the election went the other way, and there's a serious case to to be made because you didn't have an alternate slate of electors, for example. The electors have already been chosen. Sorry, too bad, so sad. The Constitution says once these electors are chosen, that's it. We still have to swear in Biden. And so this was what happened in the Hawaii scenario with the alternate electors previously, and sort of what's going on here. So if Trump thinks there are things that have a reasonable chance of coming his way, and in this case, in the hypothetical, it would end up coming his way in Georgia, I think it makes it more difficult because then you say, like, yeah, what was he supposed to do? Just wash his hands and say, well, we know there are things that are unresolved, but the timeframes ran out. That's it.
So,
I think that's a worse scenario.
The reason that we have deadlines for these things, especially like the election, is because if we didn't, then every election, it would get dragged on forever and no election would ever get resolved. So there has to be a hard and fast deadline that just says, this is the deadline, this is the cutoff.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what happens afterwards, this is it. And if you find out afterwards that, Trump really won the election, then, feel free to impeach Biden or vote for Trump the next time. That's just the way the rules go.
But
Okay, hold on. I don't feel that this particular path is helping me make up my mind here.
okay.
And that is what this is about. Okay.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
You can go back to your nuance question if you want, which I didn't answer, Paul.
What was the nuance question I asked you?
You were asking about, like, could someone walk away from this?
Yes. Could someone who has been watching this conversation for 54 minutes go, okay, clearly Rob is intelligent, Sitch is intelligent.
I don't know that I'm clearly intelligent.
Well, partially.
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
That you know how to propagate
In a
that, which
brewmaster
makes you
sort of
capable.
way.
Yeah,
Yes.
in a brewmaster sort of
Have
way.
drank the right. Yeah, okay.
And Holy Paladin's intelligence is not their maxed out stat, but they have to have
That's
enough
true.
to be able to cast certain spells. Point is it not? Is it? Well, I asked you the question earlier.
Okay,
Is
well,
it- can someone reasonably listen to this conversation and go, I still think I'm going to vote for Trump and be a reasonable person?
So, regarding the nuance, I don't think there's any in my mind. There's no nuance in terms of what Trump did was 100% wrong and horrific. And if we had a situation where Pence wasn't ultra based paladin, and had actually done the action and
Don't
it had
abuse.
gone
Hold on.
to
Don't
the House.
abuse the Warcraft terminology here. This is for us. Don't call Pence. Okay.
If Pence, old man
an
Pence,
NPC.
okay, had actually, done what Trump wanted and the House had voted Trump, even if the Supreme Court would have overturned it, which I feel like they would have, it still would have caused like this insane rift where basically you say, okay, well, should any Democrat ever trust any Republican ever again after this point? They basically just tried to steal the election.
Yeah.
So I think this would have caused detrimental harm to the country, its institutions, its systems. So I don't think there's any nuance there. What I think there's nuance is in the second part of what you're saying, which is if you accept that what Trump did was horrible and all this shit, you just accept all that, is there still a reason that you might want to vote for him over Kamala? I think you can construct those arguments, and I think there are ways to argue that, and that's fine. I just want people to accept what actually happened or what Trump actually tried to do on January 6th.
Give us some good arguments.
Okay, so
Case our
no
family
wait.
members.
Well, hold on. Yeah, hold on.
Let's-
Let's lock in our gains here. Let's lock in. This is Sam Harris says this a lot. Let's lock in our gains, and I've started using it more.
Well,
I
don't
like it.
listen to that guy.
Yeah.
Listen.
What are you doing?
Okay, listen. You listen. Silence for a moment. Are there other? So it's an odd. Pine Creek Doug. Once again, I defer to his wisdom in many ways. He's an older version of me. I think he's like 70 or something like that, with a terrible hairline. But he is wise, where he says, no matter who you vote for, you are making compromises, right? And Kamala Harris sucks, as we said, for a variety of reasons. We can get into that. But I like what Sitch said in terms of, even if you acknowledge we can still construct arguments and maybe those arguments have merit. But, Sitch, you're saying no one can dispute that what Trump did was egregious and immoral and corrupt, right?
That's my position, yeah.
Rob, would you agree that that was kind of egregious and immoral and corrupt?
Those are all different words.
Okay, I'm not asking illegal. I'm asking
Okay,
egregious and immoral and corrupt. You
I
said
think-
scummy.
I think it was scummy. I don't think I would put it to the level of egregious, immoral, or corrupt. I don't think I would put it that way.
Okay,
And
now it's
again,
semantics. Fine, fair enough. Like we said,
I
we care
don't
about
have to-
semantics. We're not nerds.
Listen, here's the deal. Here's what I'm trying to say as clear as I can. I don't have to be a fan of it I'm not a fan of it necessarily when it went down, but I don't think that this was this unique, unforgivable act that we could say you could never vote for Trump unless you could make some case that the Democrats' policy or so. Let me again reiterate why, which I don't think that we've gotten to, because I think that there is we should be okay with testing potential legal theories. These were clearly legal theories that had been brought about before, and the fact that it was ambiguous enough that it required writing a new law to close a loophole, to me shows that this wasn't something that was outside the bounds of what people could go through legally. I again point you to prominent Democrats and anti-Trump Republicans in August of 2020 who had something called a Transition Integrity Project, who wargamed out scenarios of the election and how to use legal theories to win for the Democrats. In their scenario, if Trump won the Electoral College but lost the popular vote, what the Democrats were planning to do was to file alternate electors, to push for those alternate electors to be supported by the vice president. If they weren't, to then encourage states like California to threaten to secede from the union. That was their plan. So the idea, you have to remember, Paul, that this is a binary choice. You're trying to determine between Trump and the Democrats, or Trump and Kamala. And what I'm telling to you is, both with the alternate electors idea and a bunch of other scummy things that Democrats have done, such as trying to keep Trump off the ballot, weaponizing the FBI, pushing for censorship of certain things, including about election integrity, that to me, it is clear that the establishment and their face, the Democratic Party, has been scummier and more unvirtuous and immoral in the actions they've taken to subvert democracy than Trump in this instance.
Okay, can I respond to this?
Yes, but first let me say, Rob, I swear to God, I will light your soapbox on fire before the end.
Go for it. I'll take it.
Okay.
Sitch, you may respond,
okay.
and then I want to pivot into something else.
Right. Well, I did want to ask Rob questions about Trump's intent, but before, like,
Yeah,
whether
I have a couple questions too.
intent or not would change his opinion on this. But before we get there, there's two things. Number one, I don't buy the whole, like, just because the rules don't specify, like, just because the rules don't say a dog can't play basketball, it's like, okay, well, no one expected Air Bud to jump in there and play basketball. So I don't think that's, like, a legitimate argument. But you keep bringing up the Election Integrity Project, which I didn't really want to get into because I think it's kind of like a distraction, or just it's, like, not really related. Because you had a situation, and the Election Integrity Project was this thing that Rob was talking about with this
Transition,
sort of, like,
and maybe I misspoke. Transition Integrity Project.
I believe it was the Election Integrity Project.
Well, I'm talking about maybe something different. The transition.
No, this is exactly the same thing that you're talking about.
Fair enough. As long as we're on the same page, that's fine.
It's, you basically had a group of people who were ex-politicians and political pundits, current political pundits, like Michael Steele and some other people in there, and they did a literal. Okay, we're talking about D&D in Warcraft. They did a literal tabletop RPG session, Paul, where they said, okay, let's, like, pretend that we're doing the, like, you're going to be Team Trump, you're going to be Team Biden. We're going to sit around a table. We're going to literally roll dice to determine outcomes of events here and kind of see, like, what we can game out of potential wacky things that could happen on the election. And some of those wacky things included states saying that they would cede from the union. And some of them did say that they were going to do alternate elector scheme, though all the wacky solutions or the wacky scenarios that had alternate elector schemes, none of them even attempted, even in that scenario, in their tabletop RPG session, to do the Trump thing, which is to have completely fake electors that the vice president would use as an excuse to throw out. They were saying in their RPG headspace and headcanon world that they were going to have the governors or state legislators send in alternate electors that they were going to use to try to contest the first slate of alternate electors. And so I don't, first of all, think that this has anything to do with what Trump did. And I don't think it's fair to categorize this as, like, the Democrats' plan, because this was not like Joe Biden and his team sat down and did all this and wrote up a war game here the way that Eastman did his memo and Trump actually implemented it.
May I respond?
Okay, hold on. Let me just reminder. The purpose of this is to help me decide, and this is getting into.
I know, that's why I didn't want to go into it. That's why I didn't want to go.
Well, and that's why I said I was going to burn down Rob's soapbox. There is a broader question here that we can transition to, which is, let's just talk as if we were sitting around the circle smoking a blunt. Who should we vote for?
Democrats want to censor you. They would have used any trick in
here
the
we go.
book.
Oh my
They
God.
no, I don't understand what you want
command.
out of this conversation, right? You're like, let's just talk like we're dudes around the fire passing blunt. I
Yeah,
start to do that.
literally,
You're like,
that's it.
You're like, no, don't start with that. Don't start with that. Then I'm like, okay, let's talk about the technical. No, don't start with that. I don't know what you want me to say.
That's fair.
I just
guess.
outlined evidence that Democrats literally planned out doing the exact same thing. Did they write down the memos as specifically as Trump and Eastman? No, that's because Trump and Eastman wrote down the memos after they thought the election was stolen from them. Had Democrats lost, as we saw from the Time magazine article that said that they were using fortifying the elections, a secretive cabal was fortifying, including they planned on, if they lost, having people on the street movements that they would be pushing for. We see that they would have used any scummy tactic, just like they've been doing since 2016, just like they've been doing with Control afterwards, where they were censoring people on social media and suggesting social media people censor people that had questions about COVID or about the election, etc. So what I'm telling you is, boys just sitting around passing a blunt. We could talk about the technicalities of this, but you know it, and Sitch knows it, and Adam knows it, that the fucking Democrats are scummy, and that they were going to use any legal theory that they could to try to steal the election from Trump, just like they tried to do for 4 years when he was president.
Rob, let me say two things. Number one, I apologize. I'm not trying to
You don't have to apologize.
take you out. I'm also aware I'm not the only one streaming, and so you want to get your points out. That's fair. I'm trying to keep it just as casual as I possibly can to fit in my silly mind. The second thing, I fucking hate the deep state, Rob. Okay? There's a reason that I am leaning Trump. You and I would agree on this largely. I think the deep state is fundamentally corrupt. Okay? I think that the same FBI that wrote those psychopathic notes to Martin Luther King, that same culture permeates a lot of the intelligence agencies, I believe. So, and Trump said he disavows Project 2025. Good for many reasons. But a good chunk of Project 2025, which is the dismantling of the deep state, I'm all for. The rest of the insane Christian fundamentalist shit probably outweighs the good. But to open up this conversation, to pass the blunt, to talk about who killed John F. Kennedy Jr., we won't get there, but we can allude to it. Sitch, surely you agree that the populist attitude towards the establishment, towards the deep state, towards all of the corruption that goes on behind the scenes, is at least a very good basis on which to construct an argument for voting for Trump. Do you disagree?
I disagree with that on the grounds that, I mean, first of all, I don't like that people kind of come to these conclusions about the deep state based on a vibe generally, as opposed to something more more tangible. But even if you believe all this stuff, I mean, Trump, when he was president, did he drain the swamp or did he just bring in the swamp? And I forget who it was that kind of brought this up, but they're like, Trump is talking about putting a bunch of the head of BlackRock in his cabinet. He's putting like a bunch of people in his cabinet. He doesn't seem to be a person who's going to clean out the deep state or do anything of that notion.
True. He brought in John Bolton, the warmonger.
Exactly. Brought on John Bolton. He brings it all so I don't buy this idea that Donald Trump is this magical cleansing thing. He doesn't know how to do that. He doesn't know enough people to bring in to do that. He just gets, whoever will get in, come for him. So I don't agree with that, number one. And then number two, and I know, listen, I know you don't want to hear it, Paul, and I hate to bring it back, but first of all, I have to say that Rob is correct. It was actually called the Transition Integrity Project, not the Election Integrity Project. But I think what Rob said is interesting, and I think it kind of goes into the intuition that's guiding a lot of people's behavior here, which is that even if we acknowledge that, the elector scheme was scummy or immoral, as I would say, there's a view that, well, the Democrats are just as scummy. They're just as immoral, and they probably would have tried to do the same thing too.
That's what I believe, by the way.
Okay. With the January 6th elector scheme, number one, I don't believe there's a single shred of evidence for that to be the case whatsoever. I don't believe that's ever been proven. The fact that we had a bunch of random ex-politicians and journalists do a tabletop session is not proof of that whatsoever. And I think it's very dangerous when we kind of play this idea of well, I'm going to allow my team to get away with doing something immoral because I believe the other team would have done it too, or the same capacity, when none of us really has evidence of that being the case. We just have to look at what actually happened.
Sitch, on the topic of vibes, you say we have no evidence for this. I would say that is not how human beings arrive at knowledge or truth. Surely you have seen the famous Jordan Peterson clip talking about pornography. I don't know what I can't define pornography, but I know it when I see it. In other words, vibes, right? The reasonable person standard, which is like the entire fucking basis of our legal system. Everything axiomatically goes back to the reasonable person standard. What would a reasonable person have done in this scenario? The reasonable person standard is entirely and fundamentally a vibes-based phenomenon. So
I mean, it literally has the word reason in it, but
yeah, but how do you define reason, and how do you define a reasonable person? It's a vibes thing. It's like, well, would a reasonable person have done this in these circumstances? You can never use propositional logic to hash that out entirely.
It's not just a vibes thing, anyways.
It is fundamental. I'm making a point.
There's evidence. There's evidence that leads to a vibe.
Hold on. We're going offline. Okay, Rob. This is a point that's good for us. Okay.
I know, but I'm just.
Okay. All right, just let me have this. Okay. All right.
Have it.
Bring it back on. All right, here we go. My point is.
Yeah.
My point is.
Yeah.
The point
What's your
is. The deep state is. I don't have evidence that Jeffrey Epstein ended his own life, but the vibes tell me that he does. And if I had a gun to my head and $1 million, I bet the vibes would be correct, right? And if the deep state is doing if whatever you want to call it, the current establishment is doing all this stuff to prevent Trump from winning, surely there's reason to do that. If Trump is not going to drain the swamp, well, then they wouldn't care that much to not have him in power. But I do think he represents a threat to the establishment, especially with the absolute hero, RFK Jr., now on Team Trump. And Trump's going to make him what? Head of the Department of Health or some shit like that? Not actually, but something like that. Certainly that's a threat to the permanent state, right, Sitch?
So, I mean, it would be definitely, if you put RFK in there, that would be very interesting. But I want to go to this vibes thing that you're talking about, because I do think this is
the
vitally
crux of the
important.
issue. Oh, I agree.
Okay.
It all comes down to vibes at the end of the day.
Everything you said about vibes is correct. That is generally how humans come to information. I'm sure you've, read Height and Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. People, when they're faced with a situation, they come to an immediate conclusion about it through their emotional, moral process way before their brain ever enters into the equation, or their higher functioning enters into the equation, and then logic is used to justify their feelings after the fact. This is the way that humans tend to think about things. And so, yeah, I agree, but I thought, the whole point about being an enlightened centrist is that we're supposed to put the brakes on the vibes. We're supposed to put the brakes on that sort of process and be like, okay, let's try to drag our higher brain functions into this to actually get an accurate, objective view of what's going on here.
If I may,
a valid point. Hold on.
If I may,
1 sec, Rob. I must parry Sitch, and then I will let you jump on his dead body. That's a good point, Sitch. A very good point. But I do not believe it is the task, the mandate of the enlightened centrist to have the rider override the elephant. It is to bring them in balance, like a true centrist, and acknowledge that the rationality can only bring us so far, that we must eventually submit at some point to the will of the elephant and ride that vibe as best as we can. Now, there's, of course, reason to be applied to riding the vibe. That's what we're doing here. We're discussing. I mean, certainly my videos are borderline autistic in the degree to which I, pull up clips of various fucking Jonathan Haidt and Ian McGilchrist type people. Highly reasonable, highly autistic. But ultimately, it is to justify vibes. Now, Rob, I've slaughtered Sitch with an epic.
Wait, I have to counter riposte.
All right, go ahead,
Harry.
and then Rob, you can jump in.
So I understand what you're saying. And yes, at the end of the day, if you keep dissecting further and further and further, you're always going to get to, everything has to be based on faith. Sure, that's fine. But we have to be careful. The whole reason that, we have codes and first principles and all these things that us, wanky internet people try to talk about is because we understand that humans are very biased. And we're trying to, at least I think I'm trying to, and I think you are too. I think everyone in this conversation is trying to get at what is true and to try to subvert the elephant from rampaging and taking control. And so regarding the specific example that we're talking about, the vibes that we're talking about, it's, if we were in a situation where you could say, look, here's the exact proof that shows that the Democrats did steal the election, or that the Democrats, if they had lost, they had planned to do the exact same elector scheme and blah, 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 blah. Like, I think both sides would be horribly scummy. It would definitely change my entire position in view of the circumstances. But we don't have that information. We only have the information in front of us. We do have to make a judgment based on that. And it does feel to me a little, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. It feels like a little
carefully.
It feels a little like easy to just be like, well, I'm sure the other guy is just as evil, so therefore I can kind of shrug when my preferred team does the bad thing, right? Like, that's basically the moral fallacy that all of morality, in-group, out-group preferences is built upon.
Perhaps it's easy because it's true, and Russiagate was an entire Rob,
okay,
go ahead.
Holy shit! What a bunch of philosophical prattling that I don't deal with on a normal basis. Let's talk about
comes
this.
in.
What the fuck are we talking about here? You got the wrong guy if you're looking for some deep philosophical thinker. One, it's not vibes. Like, I have plenty of evidence, which I could talk for hours and hours, that shows that what Paul calls the deep state actually has engaged in full frontal attack against any opposition to them that they see as a potential outsider, including Donald Trump. So it's not just a vibe. Sitch, do you think it's a vibe that the FBI illegally spied on Trump's team, accusing him of trying to get disinformation from Russians, and in doing so hid the fact that they were actually using disinformation that was paid for by Hillary Clinton's team that paid a suspected Russian spy? Is that just a vibe, or did that happen?
So the Russian thing actually, I feel like, proves my point, not your point. Because you have a situation where, yes, the FBI did illegally re-up the spying warrant on certain people in the Trump campaign to continue the investigation. But at the same token, when the Russiagate investigation came out, they said, we couldn't find any there. There was lots of weird smoke, but we couldn't find anything definitive. Trump's innocent of being a Russian plant. And if there really was this magical, all-encompassing deep state, why the fuck would they have ever said that? They would have said, no, he was a Russian spy. We haven't looked at all this evidence. They were just concocting something.
The reason is this, because they were looking for an excuse to be able, just like with Watergate. What was Watergate really about? Well, it was some bumbling fools. Now, arguably, this was sort of a conspiracy in its own right, but the face value story that we're told is a bunch of bumbling fools on the behalf of Nixon's campaign were trying to find information on their opponents. What this was it allowed the FBI, through the two-hop rule, to basically spy on Trump and his entire campaign. And the fact that
Don't bring up Watergate. There's no conspiracy about Watergate.
Listen, I'm okay. What I'm saying is, it's fallacious reasoning on your part to say, well, if they were any sort of corrupt, they would have been more corrupt and went further. No, it would have been harder for them to just out of whole cloth say, oh, and by the way, we've just made up that Trump actually had these contacts with Russia. What they were more likely to do is use this as an excuse to spy on him and his team, then try to prosecute people for unrelated crimes, then try to get them to flip on Trump so that they could have a news cycle or potential crimes that Trump committed, whether it be with Russia or with elsewise. The fact that they illegally spied on Trump for a crime, allegedly a crime or a problem that they knew Hillary Clinton had committed, that she actually colluded with a suspected Russian spy to get disinformation, and not only not investigate Hillary Clinton, but use that collusion with the suspected Russian spy to get warrants to spy on Trump's team, shows just how corrupt this deep state was. And that's 10 times worse, done at the behest of the establishment, than anything Trump's accused of doing with alternate electors. Right. That's one of many examples.
Okay. So
Rob,
there was so much.
Hold on, Sitch, can I? Okay. Unless you really want to respond to this.
Well, I just want to. It is, I guess I know we're getting the weeds, but it's important because the amount of smoke, the amount of crazy things that preceded the Russia investigation were overwhelming. You had Donald Trump, gets Paul Manafort, a guy who was working for the former president of Ukraine who ran away to Russia because he was essentially, running to Putin's protection. He gets him to be his campaign manager. He gets some random guy, Carter Page, that no one ever really heard of, that the Russians literally tried to transform into a Russian agent. You had someone else on the Trump team who knew that Hillary's emails were hacked by the Russians like a month before anyone hacked them. You had you had what's his name, the brother of the guy who runs that military operation, the Blackwatch. What's the name of that?
PricewaterhouseCoopers. Okay, hold on. Because what's going to happen here? Hold on.
Betsy, wait, let me just finish it, and then Betsy DeVos's brother has a secret meeting that even the report showed had a secret meeting that he lied to Congress about. where he had a Russian contact to try to establish a backdoor communication with Trump. So no, I don't like this is. I feel like this is a lot of after the fact work. There was so much smoke there that they could have if they really were this evil deep state that was that we're all liars and we're just trying to destroy Donald Trump, they could have very easily done it through the Russian investigation. They wouldn't have cleared him from it.
Okay, stop. Hold on. The enlightened centrist has come to relieve the Pandarian brewmaster. Okay? He has made the initial assault. Yes, the Russiagate hoax is a hoax, indisputably. But hold on, Sitch. You say all this smoke and shit. Did Hillary Clinton fund the Steele dossier or not?
I believe she picked it up from someone else who initially started it.
I'm sorry, Fusion GPS was what the Rob, back me up. Fusion GPS was her law firm or the law firm she was involved in, and they essentially knowingly fabricated the Steele dossier, correct?
No, wait, that's not true. Wait. You know, like half of the things in the Steele dossier were true, right?
It's not true. There were things that were said in the Steele dossier. Like, for example, here's some of the things Sitch is talking about that are true. There's a person named Donald Trump. Yes, the Steele dossier said that, and that is true. So I guess we could say some of the things. No, much of what was said in the Steele dossier that was considered true was things that were publicly reported on beforehand. What happened was, just let me argue with Sitch here for a minute on this. First off, just because there's smoke doesn't justify the illegality. And you, as someone who said earlier,
never said that. When did I say there was? When did I say it justified anything?
You just said, well, first off, as a defense to the obvious illegal behavior of the FBI that was supported by the Democrats, you said, well, there was a lot of smoke. When you're the person previously, yes,
I never
you did.
said that.
Okay,
no,
then why did you bring it? So then, okay, let me finish. Let me finish.
What was my point? What was my point? My point was I brought this up to say that yes, you're correct. The FBI lied about to re-up the investigation, but if they were really the
why the butt, Sitch? But yes, the FBI committed a crime, but there was smoke. Why did you say that, Sitch? Go ahead and tell us.
Okay, I was literally in the middle of doing it.
Well, you felt the need to interrupt me as to you and Paul had talked for a lot, so I feel that I'll get
accusing me of something I didn't say.
This is not blunt rotation behavior. Okay.
I know it's not.
As my entire too high to be yelling at anyone.
My entire point with the Russiagate investigation is that I said yes, the FBI lied in order to re-up the warrants and all that stuff, but you and Paul were making a different point. You were making a point that the deep state is this evil, evil thing that's trying to destroy Donald Trump through any means possible. And I said, if that's the case, why didn't they ally with the Russiagate? Why didn't they say there's a Russia connection? And you said it wasn't possible. So I responded by saying, what do you mean it wasn't possible? Look at all this smoke. They could have very easily painted all this smoke to show that there was a connection. That's why I brought it up. It's not a fallacious point. I've never in my entire fucking YouTube career ever said that the FBI was justified in lying to re-up the warrants. I've never fucking said that. I've always said that whatever the Russiagate investigation showed, I would read the report and stand by the results, and that's exactly what I did. Okay,
it's fallacious.
The reason I'm getting mad is because I don't appreciate. We had a nice conversation that you're impugning my character when you make that accusation.
Okay. First off, as last time I debated you, if you want to get into impugning character, you seem to get on this higher horse and talk about this stuff. I don't think what I said of you having this big butt talking about that, an obvious interpretation of what you were discussing was when we were talking about the illegality and how there was far more smoke with Hillary Clinton's team where they had 100% definitive proof that she was working with a suspected Russian spy but chose not to investigate her for the very crime that they spent all this time investigating Trump. That a reasonable interpretation of what you were saying was you were trying to make excuses for why they did these things. You've clarified as such, and now you get on your high horse and cry like you were wont to do last time. Is Adam going to falsely say that I called you a liar again, and you guys are going to pout and moan that you don't want to talk to me again because of that? I'm tired of this sort of bullshit high horse behavior. Secondly, Paul, I'm just going to leave if you don't let me finish my point. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Because I don't want to turn this stream into some fucking drama thing. So
let him finish his point. Go ahead, Rob.
Hold on, ladies and gentlemen, real quick. I just want to say, I don't want any of this drama and shit. Okay? Now I'm happy to let people communicate whatever they want. I'll bring everyone back. I was trying to get high. Okay? That's all. And I don't want to be a party of this. I don't like this drama shit. It's annoying. It's not funny. I think it's the most cancerous thing on this entire fucking platform.
Yeah, Pong, maybe we'll just say final thoughts, something, because one, I don't really understand what the utility of this is with sort of the way that it's being interrupted. I think it would be better if it was just Sitch.
Perhaps.
And the point I have that I was making there is, seems like Sitches want to, in the conversation I had with them, get on this moral high horse. How dare you? I thought we're just having a conversation. How dare you do this and get on that? It's like it's starting to become par for the course. Like, and I just find it tiresome anyways. So if we just want to finish up with final thoughts, cool by me.
So. We're coming up on an hour and a half. We can wrap this up here.
Okay, but I want to respond to this. Okay,
go ahead.
There's a common thing that happened. I don't know how to word this without it coming off like horrible. All right, I was angry, and I was just simply explaining why I was angry. You took it in a very emotional, responsive way due to a past conversation that we had like 2 years ago. All right. That was not my intention. That was not anything, had nothing to do with the conversation whatsoever. You mischaracterized my position. I was saying, no, you're wrong. And I explained my position. Now you can just say, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I mischaracterized your position. I apologize. And we can move on. That's it. Like, they're just getting ultra defensive about it and attacking me and trying to bring up a conversation from 2 years ago to try to beat me over the head with. It's not productive. It doesn't do anything.
I don't think it's productive for you to get on a high horse with this how dare you attitude. If you'd say, well, wait, if you let me explain, this is what I was doing. You interrupted me and were like, no, and felt the need to be like, you're mischaracterizing me in what I thought was a very aggressive way. I don't really care, and I'm not like someone who's very upset. I'm just saying this seems to be a pattern where you tend to get very aggressive if you think someone's misrepresenting you or saying that you're biased or some sort of thing like that. It just seems to be a pattern. All I was trying to do when I said, okay, you clarified it was fallacious, you keep saying it's not fallacious enough. Yes, what's fallacious is the type of argument that says that there cannot be corruption because if there ever was corruption, there would have been further corruption. So therefore, the FBI couldn't be corrupt in their want to spy on Donald Trump and his team illegally. Their motivation couldn't have been corrupt intent because if it was, they would have done worse. They would have actually framed him even further. That is a fallacious argument. And I think that a reasonable, objective person could see that if your argument you're making that, well, there was a lot of smoke, if that smoke somehow justifies what you're saying is, well, it wasn't corrupt, if there was so much smoke that it was illegal, but their motivation wasn't some evil thing because they're corrupt and wanted to get Trump, then why wouldn't have they, based on that same sort of smoke, except far more smoke, in the case of Hillary Clinton, where they had definitive proof that she actually was colluding with suspected Russian spies, why was there zero investigation into her?
Are we just going back and forth, or did you?
No.
Well, no, that's what I was saying. What was fallacious? That's it.
Let's wrap it up. Okay, because the reason I wanted to do this is because I could watch this back and forth on any channel, any time of day on this whole fucking space. Okay, I brought two people here who I regard as intelligent. I had a lengthy conversation with Rob, and he seemed to, and did, I think, make a relatively convincing case that there is reason to vote for Trump. And Sitch, you said that you have something to offer on the alternative. And for the first 45 minutes, hour, 10 minutes, it worked out great. Okay? But now we're getting a little too bitchy, and I think it's fucking pathetic, in my opinion. Okay? So let's wrap it up. Sitch, can you please apologize to all the Trump supporters for
God, don't
fucking
Sitch.
propaganda?
I forbid you to do that, Sitch. Please.
Well, hold on. We have Adam here. Adam, do you have any thoughts or?
Well, I have a
things
bunch
you'd
of
like to share at
questions
this point?
for Rob, so.
I don't really want to do that right now.
I'll stay
Okay,
after.
I mean,
if
look.
you want, we can talk
I
afterwards.
have
after
like
Paul leaves.
questions that are actually germane to the topic here. Like, I'm curious. Like, Rob, should Trump make it clear that there'll be that he'll accept the outcome of the 2024 election to like throw a bone to the moderate voters? I think Jason Calacanis and Lex Freeman have both mentioned this, and I do think it's like a smart move for Trump. I'm not sure if he'll actually do it, but I'm curious, like, your perspective on it.
I think that it's sort of like a loaded question because you could ask that question of any. Would you, like, let's say theoretically that Republicans just blatantly cheat in places like Texas? Would it be a fair question to Kamala Harris? Will you accept it? Like, there's always a chance. It's like, well, yeah, I'll accept it if it's legitimate, and I think it's legitimate, and I don't see evidence of fraud. Now, I think
Yeah, but why not just cross
practically
that bridge when you get to it?
because one of the problems is if he says that, right, and then there is things that appear to a reasonable person to be fraud, it will be used to beat him over the head. You said you would accept, and now you're not accepting. So
agree
I
with
think
Rob
just
on
as a
this.
matter, but I will agree with you, Adam. I think as a practical matter to sort of assuage people, he should come out and say something to the effect of, look, as long as there's a transparent process and, then yes, absolutely. There's obviously a clear chance that I could lose. At the end of the day, it's one side or the other. I could lose, and I'm willing to accept that if I lose, that I would root for for Kamala Harris to be a good president. I would help her if I can, and I would accept that I was defeated. But the way the question's worded, it's clearly done by people that are bad faith, that are that encourage the censorship of people that were talking about potential election interference in 2020 or election malfeasance in 2020. So, I don't think it's a big deal, but I think strategically it might help somewhat for him to do that.
If you think,
I agree with Rob, by the way.
Hold on. Do you actually think that if there was proof that there was like widespread voter shenanigans and Trump had given a commitment to a peaceful transition of power, you think that the media would hold him to it, even if there was obvious cases of fraud that the media uncovered? Like they would say, okay, well, we just got a transition, so
the media would never report on the obvious
That's
cases
the
of
truth.
fraud.
For one, the media isn't going to do a good job. They're clearly in the bag. Secondly, it would be used to prevent even an investigation into the potential fraud. That would be the case. So yeah, you're right. If there was 100% smoking gun, clear cut, like they declare Kamala, and then all of a sudden a guy comes out with receipts that says, look, here's my voice chat with Kamala Harris saying stuff the ballot box, and that's what I did that night. Yeah, clearly in that scenario, I don't think Trump saying what you suggested would affect that. But what it would affect would be when he started to say, hey, my lawyers are looking into this. We think that observers were kicked out in this, in Pennsylvania. We think that there was fraud there. That's when there will be a full court media press to say, Trump promised he would have a peaceful transition, and now he's not. That's the way that would play
that's the
out.
problem with the hedging, though, because the hedging is basically telling moderate voters that he is going to do this election was stolen, even if there is no proof, undeniable evidence that the election was stolen.
Are you
and
just
that
asking?
puts moderate voters into a kind of this crazy situation where they don't want to vote for a sore loser.
So are you just asking from like a rhetorical and marketing strategy he should say this? Or is
No, I'm
this
talking
like a
about
moral thing?
convincing moderate voters who I believe Trump will need to win this election. He can't just simply get his base to come out and keep throwing the election was stolen to his base and think that he's going to win the moderate voters. Moderate voters are worried right now, and I pointed to two examples, like Lex Friedman is one of them. Lex Friedman doesn't want to vote for Trump, and then Trump lose, and Lex Friedman be in a situation where Trump is a sore loser, and he contests the election.
Okay, so then here's the question. So then, Rob, how does Trump, if you're a moderate, you were defending gay marriage to Andrew Wilson, you're a moderate, what is your advice for the Trump campaign to appeal to the moderate voter?
I think Trump screwed up for 2 to 3 years. I think that there are legitimate concerns about the security of our elections, but when Trump makes it about himself, that moderates like Adam are going to be turned off about that. Instead, Trump should have been saying, we have to make sure our elections are secure. What's happened has happened. We're moving forward because anything could happen, and a foreign state could interfere, a crooked politician could interfere, etc. So he could still talk about election security, but he shouldn't make it about himself. And I do think Adam's onto something that's true. I think it would behoove Trump to assuage the fears of moderates that, like, look, I'm not just going to, because I lose, be a sore loser. I would only do it if I think there are clear things that were, questionable that need to be looked into. And so, yes, I'll promise for a peaceful transition of power unless those sort of things occur. I don't think it's super egregious or a reason not to vote for him, but strategically, I don't have a problem with Adam suggesting. I think that is something that he should probably say, although knowing that the media and the Democrats will then use that against Trump if he narrowly loses the election and wants to challenge certain things.
I want to ask
Adam,
the three of you guys this question, which is,
go ahead.
Does Paul, Rob, and Adam, in that order, do you think that there's any version of the future where Trump loses that he doesn't say the election was stolen from him?
No.
No, he probably won't. But the problem is, let me answer that in two ways, and both are going to be bad for Trump. The first, I would say no, but I understand why, because I think with sort of the interference for the intel agencies and otherwise, I think that's why the election was stolen in 2020, not because of ballot machines or whatever. So in that terminology, he could say it's a stolen election. But I think Trump will sincerely believes that he's more popular than he is, and so he'll think any loss is probably because he was cheated. That's so maybe if he lost like 90% to 10%, but any scenario that's likely to come out, which I think we would all agree, it's going to be a close election. And I think given that, Trump's going to say, I got cheated.
Yeah,
Adam?
I think he's going to say he got cheated. Like, yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm voting for him. I think so he doesn't go off the rails, right?
Well,
think
I think that's
a good negotiation to deal with him.
That could be a reason, but I think that's kind of the problem with sort of this intent, like focusing on Trump's intent, is that everyone here seems to agree that there's no reality where he's going to actually believe he lost the election. So
but I mean, can you, at some point though, and I understand a person that's turned off by that. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not trying to twist anyone's arm to saying you have to agree with me. But can you blame a person who's gone through the sort of incredible attacks that he suffered at the hands of all of these agencies underneath him, and what his supporters have gone after? I mean, at some point when you're attacked over and over and over again by these very institutions, you're going to say, I don't trust that they're all of a sudden going to play fair now.
I have a question for Sitch and Adam, and maybe Rob, although I think I know what he's going to say. This is an important question.
Do you want me to answer Rob's question, or do you want me to answer your question?
What was Rob's question?
Well, it was a point that, like, if
he feels your question.
He was saying that Trump has been so gaslit by everyone attacking him.
That's not a question. That was a point.
Okay.
Okay. So here's my
look. Weigh in on it. I mean, what?
Well, the problem with that is that Trump isn't like, he's not an innocent actor in all this. He's done plenty of fucked up shit. He continues to do plenty of fucked up shit. So it's hard for me to sort of say, well, because people were mean to him and were dishonest to him, which the media was very dishonest to him. And yes, the FBI lied about re-upping the warrants.
Yeah, and they tried to kill him.
That doesn't justify, him tried to, skating free of the first impeachment, or trying to throw, the electors out, or any of this other shit that he's done.
Okay, I want to ask this. Hold on, I want to ask this unironically. I want an honest answer. You can laugh.
That though,
you can
Rob,
laugh.
Right?
You can laugh. Hold on.
No,
this is a different.
Well,
thing.
you can't take it out on the country just because the media is mean to you.
Hey, Adam.
I'll answer if Paul allows, but he's
I'd
not
like to ask this question. I know this is going to go. I know where this is going. I want to ask Sitch and Adam. Not who, do you think that the attempt on Trump's life was only a lone shooter, or was there more involved, if you had to guess?
Oh my God. Seems like it was a lone
5
shooter,
seconds for
but
laugh.
I haven't looked into it.
That's fair. Honest answer. I haven't looked into it that much. Sitch?
Well, then why are you asking? You don't even know.
I watched
That's
that
why
guy.
you ask questions, Adam. It's called just asking questions.
He's just asking questions. I watched that guy, I forget his name, who was on Brett Weinstein's podcast, he's like the one that's really been pushing the multiple shooter theory scenario thing. And his evidence to that seemed to be, in my opinion, retarded. So I'm going to say, based on that and based on what I know, that it's just this one stupid kid.
That's fine, Rob.
And I think if it was the deep state or whatever, I don't think they would have missed.
I think that as far as shooters, that I would say the most likely scenario is this, that it was one shooter. I haven't seen any evidence that there was more than one shooter.
Sure.
And I think that probably what happened was willful neglect on the part of sort of the Secret Service, where they intentionally led to a laxed situation with his security, and they knew that there was a potential. By the way, the same would be true of Joe Biden, because we're in such a crazy time where there's hysterical people that might do hysterical shit, and so you're culpable if you're intentionally having lax security. And I think now they got caught, and they're trying to make excuses, which is actually making it worse.
Yeah, it would have been better if Biden, strategically, if Biden had been shot, then they wouldn't have to have done a coup, and then the Democrats could have said, "Oh my God, look, the Republicans are crazy, and now we can." They
Still could happen.
10%. Well, here's my but Rob, let me ask you. Fine, one shooter, but do you think that was there any other groups potentially talking to that kid or doing some communication with that kid.
Well, it seems that I would say there's a good chance of that because he had like Telegram channels that we don't have access to, but that could be anything. I mean, my God, that could be him just talking to LARPers on Call of Duty or something like, yeah, take these shitheads out. So I don't have any proof that like he was talking to some deep state asset, but I mean, sure, I guess it's a potential, but I think that my conspiracy of this is not one where someone at the FBI or the CIA specifically told this kid, we want you to shoot Donald Trump. I think it was more of a laxed security at knowing that there was an environment where he could likely be shot. So I do put culpability on the Secret Service, but my gut feeling, and certainly I see no proof, isn't that he was in contact with people from the Secret Service or the Biden camp or anyone to do this. I don't see evidence of that.
This is fair. Okay. We're at an hour and 37 minutes.
All right, I got a question. What
Adam, hold on. Before you ask that, I want to wrap up on my end. If you guys want to take it to your guys' streams, that works. I can just end mine.
It's fine by me.
Okay, that works. All right.
Well, I mean, I kind of want to ask. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I can ask Sitch.
Does that work? Okay, all right.
I could go on you guys' stream.
I mean, I don't.
Aren't you guys both still streaming?
Sitch is not going to tell me why the CIA and the FBI want Trump to lose because I don't think he knows. But so,
all right, Adam baited me.
And I was going to ask Rob, if he likes it when people misrepresent him, but I think I already know Sitch's answer to that question.
Sitch, wait, what was it? What were you going to ask Sitch about? Why does say that again to Sitch? What was the question?
Why the CIA would want, or why the FBI would want Trump to lose?
Yeah, CIA or FBI.
Well, I mean, he's been shit talking them. What do you mean? Obviously, they would. Well, as an organization, you'd think they'd be preferable to.
Oh, because he wants him to, because they're going to defund him.
Well, maybe because they're going to defund him, just because he's been so kind of hostile towards them. Though it is interesting because even with the raid on Mar-a-Lago, the FBI was like super against doing it, and they basically had to be forced into doing it by the Justice Department. So. They're at least in that instance, they were trying their hardest to be impartial. But I would assume that they're biased against Trump because he's been so hostile towards them.
Interesting.
What about the CIA?
Right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
I don't know. Sure. Same.
Does he shit talk the CIA? No, he's smart enough not to shit talk the CIA, right?
Right.
Chuck Schumer told you all before Trump was sworn in that the FBI would find 6 ways from Sunday to get him back at Trump because he criticized them. That's exactly what's happened for 7 years.
I don't doubt it. The deep state is real. Okay, I want to end with this comment here. This comment represents everything I think is wrong with the world. All constantly asking questions framed around vibes and not truth is completely idiotic and dangerous. Alec,
true.
I suggest you watch my video called "Why Everyone Who Disagrees with Me is Probably Autistic," and then you will see the error of your ways. Okay, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. This has been great. I will chew on this. I promised people that I would talk to Rob and bring someone on, and Sitch, I thought, did a great job providing the counterbalance.
Can I say something real quick?
Go ahead. I'll give you each the last
Adam and
word.
Sitch, if you want to send me a link to whatever to continue this conversation, by all means. That's it. That's awesome.
Maybe another time.
Okay.
I don't know. I think we're going to read some super chats and then wrap up.
That's no problem. No hard
we can do it another time, right?
Oh,
sure.
That's a good reminder.
Yeah, sure.
Read mine too. Okay. All right. Godspeed, guys. Thank you. I'm going to read these super chats and head off, but you guys can head out.
Take it easy, Evan.
Godspeed, gang.
Later,
just unmute
everybody.
yourself in the Zoom. Sitch.
Yeah.
Take care, you guys.
Yep.
Peace.
See ya.
Thanks for having us.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Okay.
vibe space is the key. 3D
And
super
we're
chats.
back.
I love you, Rob, but Donald Trump literally tried to steal our votes. I just can't abide by that.
What's up?
I left. Oh, you're here?
I'm here.
Oh,
Can you
okay,
hear me?
good.
Can the chat hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Everyone
right.
can be. Everyone.
Well,
can be
I mean,
heard.
I thought that went great till the end, but I guess,
I'm glad I told
it's
you
like
about
poetry.
that.
It rhymes, right?
I'm glad I told you about the Rob situation before we began.
It's
So you
it's
weren't
pretty
completely
funny.
in the dark.
It's pretty funny, yeah. So
It's funny that like he's framed it as look, and I don't want to throw shade at Rob. I sent Rob a message today saying like, if there's any bad blood, like I'm a forgiving person. Let's just bury the hatchet and move on. So, but it is funny. Like I'll say one thing about it is he's framed it as like us being upset about it, but
I know I was like,
I mean, I'm not really upset about it.
right.
But Rob, look, in all seriousness, let's just bury the hatchet.
Sure.
I don't understand. Like, Rob has to get upset when people misrepresent him, right? I mean, that's just like a human thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's completely normal.
Right.
It's abnormal not to get upset when people misrepresent you. So,
Well, it's weird because, like, I mean, it really shows how miscommunication happens. Because, like, when I said, like, oh, the reason I'm angry, in my mind, I'm saying this to, like, as a means of trying to de-escalate the situation because I'm angry and I'm sort of like my elephant's like in control and I like it's hard to like turn off the anger. So I'm just trying to like intellectualize it and sort of like de-escalate the situation. And obviously he interpreted that as like a further attack or something. So,
right. Yeah.
but whatever. It's just everyone's gonna take things the way they take things.
So much, so much is for miscommunication. So much bullshit is just completely around miscommunication, but whatever. Whatever, we try. Yeah, so
Anyway, let's read the super.
No, the important question.
Right.
So the question everyone wants to know. What are some good arguments to vote for Trump, even though he did the no thing? Right. Even though he did the no thing, what do those of us who might not vote for Kamala because she's a goddamn communist?
Well, I think the arguments that I could gift you or someone else that you can make is, I mean, number one, I think even the argument Paul's putting forward, like if Kamala was sincere with this wealth tax and there was some way that you think it would actually come to fruition. I mean, I think even if she said she was in favor of it, I don't think it would come to pass. But if you actually thought it was, would come to pass, I think that's a pretty insane policy in my opinion.
That's it.
Well, no, well, hold on.
I liked Rob's. It's okay to test legal theories better. I mean,
that's a retarded argument. It's a completely retarded argument. I say, okay, like, we've talked about this. If part of the reason I say I think there's legitimate reasons to vote for Trump is because I view Trump's actions with the elector scheme, even though I think it's completely immoral, irreparable, and you should vote for him principally. I don't view it the way that a lot of other people view it. A lot of people view it in the context of Trump wants to be president for life. Right? He wants to be president forever. He wants to be a dictator. If I thought that, then I would agree with those people that you should never vote for Trump under any circumstances. It doesn't matter what the fuck Kamala's positions are. I would vote against Trump no matter what, blah, 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 blah. And if you don't, you're like out of your mind. Right.
Agreed.
I believe and we've both talked about this. So you have the same position is that Trump, the reason he did the immoral actions of the electoral scheme is because he's so status driven and really wants that second term. And he knows that, two-term president, high status, one-term president, loser. And so because now this is obviously mind reading, but because I think that's what's motivating Trump, I believe that even if he won a second term, that, it's not going to name himself king, emperor forever. He's not going to name his son emperor after this. And, we're going to be doomed forever. Right? Obviously, if I thought that, then I would change my opinion on it. So.
Yeah, I was reading the McMaster book today about Trump, and Trump actually added the word loser to some speech to call a bunch of terrorists losers. He was so proud of himself. I was like, oh my God. Doesn't that say it all? He is worried about being a loser. That's like the worst thing in the world for him.
Yeah, I mean, even in, the Lex Fridman interview, which I thought was mostly boring, it's like Lex Fridman asked him about or I don't know if he asked him or if Trump just brought up the whole incident in like the graveyard thing. Yeah. And like Trump instinctively starts talking about how he doesn't need the press because he's so popular. And then it just becomes like a 1-minute thing about he's supposed to be talking about like this family and their loss. And instead it becomes like Trump saying like, oh, I'm so popular. Like this, interview with you, Lex, is going to get like 10 times the views because I'm on, like, it's just, it's like pathological. He can't help himself. It's so funny.
Yeah, I was thinking that's a bold claim. I'm curious if it will, but
I don't think it's going to get 10x the factor.
I think it'll
get a lot of views, but not 10x.
Yeah, a lot of people.
But right.
But a lot of people think he messed up, Lex. So I don't know. That's a tricky.
I think it was a pretty lame interview. Honestly, I thought it was pretty boring, pretty lame. There wasn't really anything interesting in it. I mean, it's good for Trump. It definitely humanizes him. So it's like definitely good for Trump. Except he did look kind of low energy, but I guess on Lex that makes sense because Lex is pretty low energy, so maybe it's
Lex
not so apparent.
Lex, and this is funny because that thing that you sent me of Scott Adams with the guy, one of the hosts from All In Podcast was talking to Scott Adams, and he said the exact same thing. He articulated something I articulated on the stream like weeks ago. Like, as a moderate voter, you're worried Trump is going to make you look bad if he loses, right? Like,
Right.
he's going to do some more sore loser, the election was stolen nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he made a pitch to Scott Adams that Trump should speak directly to these voters and kind of assuage their concerns. And then Lex Fridman kind of gave him that opportunity on his show, right?
Mhm.
But obviously Trump didn't take it. So
No. Well, this
Yeah.
was what I thought was interesting about the question I asked at the end. Everyone in the conversation says that they don't think there's a scenario where Trump's going to acknowledge that he lost.
and
no
he
matter
has
what.
to speak to that. Look,
Right.
we could change our views on that if Trump starts coming out and saying, "Oh no, I'll be good," right?
Yeah, it's interesting because like even like in a very cynical way, I mean, wouldn't it serve him to just lie? Say like, of course I'll say, that I lost if I did, if it wasn't rigged, and then he can say whatever he wants after the fact, and no one's going to care on his
To
side anyway.
to get the moderate voters. Yeah, exactly.
Right. It is interesting to me that he's just so steadfast in sort of framing it that specific way. So
Yeah, because it appears that he's framing it that way because he is gonna. He's like
Yeah,
hedging. He's totally hedging.
I know. Oh, he did the same thing when he won. He was gonna say he was kind of making it seem like it was rigged, and then he won, and then all kind of disappeared. So it's.
Yeah.
But to go back to the answer your question, if you believe that Donald Trump is an authoritarian dictator who wants to wield authoritarian power to become dictator for life, obviously there's no rationale you'd ever vote for him under any circumstances. If you believe that he did the elector scheme in order to just maintain the status of being a second-term president, then even though that becomes a different question. Because from my position, that's so reprehensible that I say I'm not going to vote for him on principle. But someone else could say, well, I think that is super fucking horrible, but I still could possibly vote for him if Kamala's policies are like so detrimental to the country, right? And so you'd have to wait and see what more of information about Kamala's policies would be.
So him seeking a second term for blaming the January 6th stuff on his status seeking is better than his power seeking.
Yeah, in terms of like whether it's something you'd ever vote for him again or not, right? You have to kind of make that argument. It's just it kind of annoys me because, I mean, again, like I understand why people don't want to bite the bullet emotionally. Most people are not weirdly autistic like I am, and most people don't want to bite the bullet. Though, so instead you get the conversation about how like January 6th was, or the elector scheme specifically,
insurrection.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean, instead you get the elector, like you get all this cope about the elector scheme not really being a big deal, being a legal theory, or and some of these
we
other
should
sort
test
of
legal theory.
Yeah, some of these other kind of like ridiculous notions, which every single person on the face of this earth knows that if the Democrats tried to do
my
this,
God,
that yeah, there'd be a lot of Democrats that would defend it. Obviously, I would imagine, but the Republicans would be screaming bloody fucking murder from high heavens up in for all eternity about this, as they should if it happened in reverse. So I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it at all.
Yeah.
But anyway,
fun stuff.
Deej Nuts for $5 says, Sitch, hypothetically, if the election was stolen, how would you challenge things in a way that wouldn't have resulted in a we'll get them next time? Well, you have to challenge them through the courts. And if that doesn't work, then you literally have to challenge them through the we'll get them next time strategy. And while, Trump's out of office, I mean, he should be publicizing all of these stuff. He should be going after it legally in the courts. And you could actually get stuff coming out, which is supposedly, I haven't really been following the cases in Georgia, but that's the claim people are making. That's the only thing you can do. It's like when the cop, pulls you over, you don't fight the cop because then you get shot, right? You have to fight him in the courts afterwards. So
what happens if he does that? Let's say an alternate reality and like it turns out that the election was totally fraudulent. And so he runs again, but he loses.
Wins in a landslide.
No, but he loses. Look, this is my thought experiment.
Oh, what do you say?
So life is just completely unfair.
Right.
Like he really got the election was stolen from, but he loses in his rematch.
Well, again, it's the situation where you have to make the sacrifices that is protecting America more important than destroying it.
Oh,
Right?
of course, yeah.
If you don't have evidence, and this is the problem, is like, yeah, like if you have definitive 100% evidence, that the election was stolen, and you broadcast it from every fucking corner of the world, and the Democrats ignore it and the left-wing media ignores it, okay, then maybe we can have a conversation. But that hasn't happened. And I
No,
don't
of
think that's
course
going
not.
to happen, right?
Yeah, of course
Because
not.
that's not the scenario, right? And this is what, like, the problem is that Donald Trump, he didn't have information on January 5th. He didn't have like, oh, I know for a fact that the election was stolen from me. He was operating, as Paul said, he was operating purely on vibes. And I'm sorry, but operating purely on fucking vibes, you don't get to try to overthrow democracy in a way that could potentially cause irreparable harm to the country, right? On a vibe check.
Of course,
That's
yeah.
not that's a no-go for me.
I would like to think that if there were 10,000 ballots dropped into Georgia and really Trump won the state and there was concrete evidence of this and some sort of election shenanigans to cover it up, I'd like to think the media would dig into that. That would be something that they couldn't exactly sweep under the rug. I know that obviously where something can be misinterpreted, obviously they misinterpret to the Democrats' advantage, but something like that where there was really concrete evidence and it was something completely just wild, that the media would in fact have to cover it. What do you think?
I would hope so. I
Yeah.
can't say definitively. I think depends on what it is and how concrete it is.
Well, I mean, if there was like police investigations and all that kind of stuff, like the authorities got involved, they would have to cover it. Yeah.
It could be like the Hunter Biden laptop situation where they say, oh, this is fake. And then it just becomes very like the evidence mounts up that they're
forced to. Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Report on it. And I think, Trump did himself such a massive disservice by just crying wolf so hardcore and trying, Trump and Trump supporters latching on to literally every single possible, a claim, and 99% of them are to turn out to be false, and you're just gonna walk away with egg on your face every time. You get a scenario, you're like, well, next time we got him, and it's like, okay, who's gonna believe that?
Yeah. Yep.
And
it's worrisome.
If Trump had said, and this really shows you why, like, also just doing the right moral thing would have been also the right pragmatic thing on a cynical level. If Trump had just said, I think that the election was stolen. I think there's election fraud, but for the good of the union, for the good of the stability of the country, I'm going to, peacefully pass power to Biden. I'm not going to contest it through this like wacky elector scheme thing whatsoever. And, in the next 4 years, I'm going to, show that there's been election fraud, and I'm going to run a campaign, and we're going to fucking annihilate them in 2024. If Trump had done that, I don't think there's a possibility that he could lose.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think obviously there's a lot of moderate voters out there, I think, that want to vote for Trump but are a little tepid over the January 6th stuff. I think that really is like the do or die for them. So
right.
Yeah. That's why I think Trump should speak more to it. He should speak to it authentically, but he won't, because you're right, he is hedging. He totally is hedging.
Slate King for 16 months. Thanks so much. I love how the least informed person gets to decide what is important. Paul's actively steering the debate. Well, to be fair, and I guess we should have probably set up the context a little better. The entire form of the conversation was supposed to be, me or Paul asking me a question, Paul asking Rob a question, and us trying to convince him. That was from the get-go the entire framework of the conversation. So
yes.
Wind Traveler for 15 months says, for the record, Thanos was totally wrong. He could have just doubled the resources instead of killing half the people. There you go.
He had the gauntlet, right? What the hell?
Right.
What a loser.
Stug for 25 months says, quote, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. This is nothing more than erection fraud. Chuck Schumer. There you go.
Wow.
Stargate 404 for $20. Thanks so much. Says, I don't agree with January 6th and I don't believe in systemic fraud. But what if hypothetically the election was actually fraudulent, like videos of poll workers dumping thousands of votes in a bonfire? Would that change the morality? It would change. So, like, if Trump had like video of like that, like, poll workers dumping, votes in the fires and we had actual evidence of that. And then he said, oh, well, it's too late. It's too late. It's after deadline. Number one, as I said in the conversation, I do think Trump should have still followed the rules. But if he didn't and he did the elector scheme, I still say that was bad, but it wouldn't, in my mind, be like so incredibly morally reprehensible as it was. Because it'd be like, well, that's bad. I don't think you should do it. But we do know that the Democrats cheated, right? Like it would change, in my mind, the moral calculation significantly. So,
Yeah, proof changes everything. Like if there's undeniable proof, it does change the moral calculation for me, at least. So
right. Harrison Dill for $2 says, Sitch, I'm sorry, you are a true centrist. Well,
look at this.
Thank you.
Harrison Dill is back.
And Harrison Dill for another $2 says, Sitch for president. S-Class is the best class.
Look at that.
Well, thank you. Lucy Lemon, thanks so much for the fight. Get the memberships.
Yes.
I don't know if I sounded weird. I have a cold, so my nose is a little stuffy.
You do sound weird, but that's okay.
Yeah,
we're used to it.
Thank you. My normal cartoon voice sounds slightly more cartoony than normal. Jay for $20, thanks so much, says there aren't deadlines when it comes to elections, at least when it comes to large blue counties reporting their vote tallies. I don't know if you're just being facetious, but there are literally deadlines for the elections.
Yeah, so, why do you think the line goes straight up like that? Because it's like right before the deadline, they got to get all their votes in.
There you go, exactly. Yeah. But no, but I mean, and I do agree with what Rob said at the end, which is that Trump and the Republican Party, if the election fraud concerns were true, really should have been spending this last 4 years, going to all these states and kind of like shoring up the election process. And I don't think Trump has really done any of that or even cares to do any of that whatsoever. So
it's not as much fun as a rally. Get to try out your new comedy material.
Right.
It really is a streaming versus video essayist model. It's just streaming is so much more fun, right?
True. That's very true. Philip Kogan's for 20 months says Kamala Harris is the actual fascist the left is constantly railing against. Really? I don't see her being a fascist. I don't know why. I don't know what she said that would make you lean into fascism, but it's funny because she's a cop. So it's funny if all the left votes for a cop. It's kind of hilarious, but
if she wants to do the unrealized gain stuff, that would be kind of
that'd be like communist. That wouldn't
fascistic, maybe.
I guess. I mean,
take all your money.
I think that would be communisty, not fascisty. But
okay, I guess you're right.
Stug for $10 says, I don't care what legal loopholes exist. I prefer that my candidates respect the spirit of the law. The Dems may treat the Constitution like toilet paper, but doesn't mean Trump gets to burn it.
That is such a great super chat. I want to frame that super chat.
It's a very good, it's a very eloquent way of framing it. Yes, I like that.
Did you pass JMax super chat?
No, I don't think I've got to it yet.
Oh, okay.
Unless I just don't see it on my screen. I'm at Brian Schultz for 13 months. Says, why did he get so triggered by the simple request to keep it casual? I mean, to defend Rob, and this is, why I wish, she didn't get so mad at the end, is that I understand his frustration. His frustration was, well, so since me and Jung are like more on the enlightened centrist spectrum, I kind of understand his vibe more than Rob doesn't really understand his vibe, which is that essentially, I think Rob was trying to make an argument, an intuitive vibe argument that because the Democrats had done, in his mind, all these, unfair, fraudulent things, that would justify Trump doing his scummy January 6th thing. I think if Rob just said that actual thing like that, then Paul would have understood and been like, okay. But because he was kind of couching it in sort of a more debate style soapbox thing, that was getting like Paul triggered, and he didn't really want to dive into that and hear that.
I tried to get him to say that, but we had to move on. So
right.
Because that is the most interesting thing to me. Like, you can't take out your shit on the country. You can't destroy all of our institutions because you're fucking because you think everyone's out to get you. That's not right.
No, that is, yeah, obviously that's the problem, right? If you're going to do something to that level, you got to be careful, or you have to be doing something for like the good of the country, not the good of yourself, right?
Yeah.
So, and obviously it could be very difficult to separate those two things. JMac or Circuit 5, thanks so much. Daddy JMac for the $50. Does a vote for Trump is a cost benefit analysis with regards to policy? It's why I'm not surprised when Republicans still want to vote for him, even when acknowledging everything. However, those still in the middle like me are not as easily convinced.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Will
I think
Trump come out and say something?
I think that's why so much of the conversation about the elector scheme is either unknown to most people, or even the people that know it, it gets like super hedged into oblivion, is because it does make it very difficult. Not impossible, but makes it substantially more difficult to be like, well, this is really fucked up, but Kamala's policies are so bad, I'll still vote for Trump anyway. So, on an emotional level, that is.
It's hard. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Fall, thanks so much for $20. Fall says, isn't Kamala an autocrat, not a legitimate candidate technically? The people didn't vote for her. The electors for the DNC did. The same with Bernie. I don't know what you mean by Bernie. They don't have to follow the popular vote. The RNC does. So why not the DNC? Well, from my understanding, I don't know. The RNC DNC comment is, I believe both the RNC and the DNC do have, I don't think it's laws because they're both private organizations. They do have rules within their organizations. I believe that they both have to follow whatever the vote is. Now, obviously, if a candidate drops out, then they're just going to have to choose someone different. There's nothing to do about it. Like, for example, if Joe Biden just died, how is it really that much different than, then the DNC is going to have to they're going to have to appoint someone or have the electors all fight it out at the convention if Joe Biden died. So that's why I don't really buy this whole argument about like the Kamala is an autocrat or is a coup or any of this other stuff. When everyone acknowledges that Joe Biden was not physically, mentally fit to run for office again.
This argument exists as a whataboutism for the January 6th stuff.
Right.
It really
does.
Feels
like to me.
Yeah.
Like if you had a scenario where here's where I would agree with this argument. Okay. And I'm going to have to use Republicans because it would make more sense, just like the way things are framed. Like if you have a scenario where it's this election, people overwhelmingly vote for Donald Trump, the Republican Party overwhelmingly wants Donald Trump, and the RNC says, you know what, fuck it, we don't like Donald Trump. We're going to use our own policy or our own campaign shenanigans or private organization shenanigans to kick Donald Trump off the ticket and, declare Nikki Haley is the candidate, right? If that was the scenario that happened, then I would agree with sort of like the framing of, oh my God, this was like a crazy coup or something, right? But that's not what happened with Biden. Everyone saw that he was completely mentally unfit to run, that he had been hiding it from like the mainstream and from most of the people down on the left. They didn't see it. I know you guys say, oh, you saw it because you hate Biden. It's very easy for you to see it. Almost everyone I knew on the left, even though when I'd have this conversation with them before the debate, where I'd say Biden, I think, is mentally not there, they would literally, they didn't believe me. They did not believe me. And they would fight me tooth and nail. Okay. They honestly didn't believe. And so when it became super apparent to everyone, okay, literally every Democrat voter wanted, is fine, is totally happy with him being off the ticket. So it seems super weird. It's kind of like, the meme where it's like the two people are in bed and they're like, I consent. And then there's a third person over there. It's like, I don't consent, who's not even in like the bed with them. That's what it feels like. It's like all the Democrats consented to this. Almost every Democrat's on board with this. They're all fine with it. They don't feel wronged. And yet you have a bunch of other people who are not Democrats who are not going to vote for Kamala who have a problem with it. And it seems kind of like we're mad because we thought Trump would crush Biden, which he probably would. And now the race is more contested. So
I didn't consent because I wanted a contested convention.
Well, I agree. That would have been more fun.
I know. Come on.
But even if there was a contested convention, which would have been more fun, I mean, that wouldn't really absolve the claim of like, well, the people didn't. I mean, the people aren't
Yeah,
voting
it
in that
would.
situation either. So
It'd be
it
a
would make
lot. It would
difference.
go a long way towards absolving that. Obviously, if the people got out there and battled it out for the delegates instead of just this coronation behind closed doors, it would have gone a long way towards calming the coup
I don't think so.
accusations.
I don't think even remotely, because
Really?
why would it? You instead of because you
I
would
mean, you
have the
could be
people
right. Like they could still
like
be saying it.
if we had the electors battle that out of the DNC and they came away say they chose Kamala or Gavin Newsom or whoever, right? It's not like the people, American people, didn't vote for that. Like a bunch of electors did. So people would say, oh, a bunch of elites literally got in a room at the DNC and battled it out to appoint whoever the president is. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, and the argument really only exists as a counter to the January 6th stuff anyway. So you're right. It
Right.
would still exist.
Yeah, so I don't think it would make a difference, but it would have been more fun, obviously, to cover. But
Yeah.
Fondue for $5 says, I disagree that Sitch is a holy paladin when he tried healing once and hated it. That's
What?
true, but listen, as I've said, I did play Vanilla WoW as a holy paladin. And my computer was so bad I had to stare at the floor during raids and heal. So I have the
Ouch.
experience. Now I did get second rank in PvP, so I was also running it up on the battlefield. Thaw for $20, thanks so much. Says, I don't know, Paul. I haven't seen even the 90s Christian conservatives uphold messing with children, racist and sex hiring practices, being pro-crime, being pro-legal immigration. Need I go on? So there
Oh,
you
that's
go.
that's a good argument. You're doing it because Kamala is going to trans the children and you're on the children's side. That's a good argument right there.
Well, right, and you could throw that in too when you were talking about like reasons to vote for Trump despite the
yeah,
elector
totally.
scheme. You could say,
Saving children.
right, saving children, or you think that the illegal immigration problem's out of control or whatever. I mean, there's reasons that you can posit for that. So
Saving children from transing.
now I don't know if the saving children from transit thing would be best argument in my estimation, but
Oh, really?
we'll see.
It's a better way to word it.
I don't think this happen. I don't think it's happening enough. If Kamala comes out and she's like, "We're gonna put HRT in every classroom," then I think you'd have maybe grounds to stand on if that was your
One
position.
child is too many, Sitch.
Right. Or if Biden hadn't put in that executive order to keep the border closed, which I believe is still in effect currently, that would be that kind of hurts the argument about the immigration stuff too.
It does. Yeah.
Slate King for $10 says, Sitch, did you actually tell Paul that being informed is better than being ignorant? That isn't his brand. I did. But listen, we've passed him unwittingly the enlightened centrist crown. So if he's going to represent the enlightened centrist, he's got to do it properly, right? There could be a big problem that we both, seems like maybe we define enlightened centrism very differently than he does. So,
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
He defines it as neutral.
I don't know how he defines it actually, so I'm not even sure. But we'll have to ask that next
Libertarian
time.
Sasquatch. Coming in
Fondue
with the burn.
I know. Fondue for $2 says, just in time for the tears. I'm glad you made it. Libertarian Sasquatch for $2 says, never heard of Paul. Dude sucks. No, listen, I like Paul. Be nice to Paul. Okay.
Be nice. Come on.
Right. Melik for $20. That's mean. Melik for $20 says, bring Rob on the show. Finish your food. Wow. Okay. Well, listen, I'm not opposed to Rob coming on again. So I honestly
We could do it.
did not want to things to become so contested at the end.
Next time Rob comes on, I'm going to misrepresent the fuck out of him constantly.
Right.
I'm just, what? I thought you liked it.
Yeah. Sammy G for $5 says, remember, boys, to hug it out at the end. No drama, only bromance. There you go.
What was that about? I was like, what?
Sammy G is like really into those yaoi gay animes where all the men are gay with each other.
Hugs it out. Yeah.
She kind of has like a headcanon, I think.
Everyone has
that'd be
makeup
my
sex.
Guess. Right.
Yeah, look, everyone likes it when we get triggered, so I was like,
not for Sammy. She wants the yaoi.
When Paul was saying, I don't want this on my channel, I was like, what? Really?
Right.
I thought that was the whole point of this.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I think, someone in the chat says selecting a presidential candidate is not the same as selecting the president. The DNC is selected who would represent them. That is a good point. I should bring that up too. Is like, I think the whole like coup narrative would have like if there was a different scenario where say like Biden went through the campaign, won the election, right, and then
And then,
dropped out, and Kamala like took over. I would be like, okay, I could see where people are coming from. That's pretty like fucking weird, right? That would be highly suspect at that point. I think that argument would be legitimate if that was the case. But yeah, it's not really the argument because if you're feel so wronged about Biden being replaced, don't vote for him, right? No one's forcing you to. So why does it matter?
I did say that I thought this was a strategy for him to nab the nomination and then to hand it over to whoever he wanted. We argued about it on stream, so
Yeah, I didn't
that's
believe that.
essentially what happened, though.
Well, yeah, but I think you would acknowledge that by the way Biden acted, it's very clear that he didn't have this plan. Like he seemed like he was hanging on to this with every like by tooth and nail until the very end.
Yes, but I think it's safe to say that people around him could have been easily seeing the writing on the wall and kind of
Maybe they thought that
nudged
was the
this.
case.
Yeah, it kind of nudged us in that direction. Yeah, because they didn't
I
want to
don't-
have a contested primary or contested primary. And they look, and I after watching the DNC, I kind of agree that having a big food fight at the DNC probably wouldn't have been great. Well, now that the honeymoon's over, maybe it would have been better. Who knows?
Maybe it would be, yeah. I mean, this
Yeah.
could all crash and burn with Kamala. She could do so poorly at the debates that everyone's going to be like, "Oh my god, we should have had a contested DNC." Right?
I know.
Like,
I think that
yeah.
might happen. Actually,
I mean, there's like a 30% chance that it could happen. I don't think it's so outside.
I give
the
it a
bounds of reality.
50-50.
Okay,
Yeah,
50-50,
at this point.
right? So,
Look, why isn't she doing more interviews?
it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, because obviously
Because she sucks.
she sucks. It's hilarious too, and it was hilarious that people are getting super triggered. When we pointed out on Twitter that like Kamala's hiding from the media, they're like, "Oh my god, how dare you give Trump ammunition?" I'm like,
What do they
"Okay, I'm
call
just
it
saying
when
what's
you-
actually happening? I don't know what to tell you."
So Trump in the Lex Freeman interview, he's totally vague posting about Kamala, is he not?
He was 100%.
Yeah, he's like, oh, some people, they just can't hack it. They get like stage fright. They're just terrible speakers. He's fucking
Yeah.
totally. Who do you think he's talking about?
Obviously, he's talking about Kamala. Well, he claimed he was talking about someone he knew that was
One of my
Republican, so-
friends that I don't want to
know.
mention.
Yeah, I don't know who. Right? Sure. Actually, you know what? I don't think he was vague posting about Kamala because Trump would just say it was Kamala. Like he wouldn't vague post about it. You just say, "Oh, she." I mean, he said it a million times. Oh, Kamala is afraid to do all of these interviews. I think he said it in the Lexi interview.
Yeah.
So, and listen. I mean, even if this is what I'm trying to tell people is like, even if you hate Trump's guts, you do have to acknowledge the reality is that he's not afraid to go out there and do a million fucking interviews. He's doing interview after interview after interview. And Kamala is hiding. And that's what part of why I don't begrudge anyone for not voting for Kamala. Like her policy still is kind of vague. What is even her policy prescriptions is pretty vague. Still. So
Her ability is also super vague.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think you're right. Like, if this was like a Josh Shapiro or something, we'd be in a completely different.
Oh my God, it'd be another world. Yeah.
Right? It would be interesting if Kamala does so bad that everyone regrets not doing contested election. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Mr.
It's gonna be fun.
Well, listen, this debate's going to be very fun.
Oh yeah.
I hope. It could be super boring, but I think it's going to be fun. Mr. Ubercross for $10. Thank you so much. Says both parties should agree that any evidence of fraud should be investigated regardless of who wins, not that they should blindly accept the results no matter what. I
Of
agree with that
course.
100%.
Yeah, but
100%, yeah.
why doesn't he just say that?
They should both say that, yeah. I don't think Kamala would ever say that though. Either. I don't think either of them. I don't think Trump would say that. I don't think Kamala would say that. So
Yeah.
the wounds are too deep. Fondue for $5 says, I do give PF a lot of respect for dropping a rock on an argument when it becomes personal. Everyone needs a friend like that in these conversations. Look at that, Fondue. Very enlightened centrist of you.
Yep.
Cole Hammer for $10 says, "Do you think the U.S. should be a duopoly or a multi-party system? Why or why not?" You know, I've always thought it would be better if we had multiple parties. Um, and I think I watched a video where someone made a pretty convincing argument about like when you look at a lot of these countries that have the multiple parties, it kind of actually creates just as much problems, but just in different ways. So
Right.
I don't have a strong answer to that. The only thing I would say is I do think we should get rid of, I think we should have ranked choice voting. That would be
Yeah.
my answer to that question. We should have
That
ranked
would
choice
go a
voting.
long way towards getting rid of it. It's sort of evolved this way because of the situation where only two parties have, this 51-49 lock on the electorate. So it really
Right.
pushes the idea of third parties out of the way. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't think people would be as happy knowing that they're living under the rule of a party that gained power through like 20% of the electorate. I mean, that's a
Mm,
huge thing, right?
right.
Like,
Right. Right.
so you've got 80% of the electorate didn't get their candidate. At least this way, you're like, okay, well, 50% of the electorate voted for this guy, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah. I agree. Ranked choice voting. Make it a thing. Equal Shocks for $5 says it's bizarre to see a right winger who oh God, it's very mean. It's bizarre to see a right winger who radiates soy destiny energy. DGG, not even once. Wow. Okay. But thank you for the $5.
They like arguing with Rob. Rob is in with the DGG sphere.
Well, he's a good foil because he's, pretty hyper knowledgeable about these things and he has good rhetoric to side of clash with destiny. So
Yeah, I was surprised to hear he argued in favor of gay marriage. So I would like to ask him a little more about that. But
right. Good for him. Fondue for $5 says funny. I saw Rob bring up the same drama point when he was going over the counterpoints debate.
what was
I
that?
Rob made a video recently about the Connor conversation. So Fondue saying that he brought up the drama from 2 years ago or whatever in that conversation. So I didn't watch that video, but
I watched the video. I sent him a message saying, "Look, no hard feelings here. Let's just
right.
move on." Look, and look. I don't ask for apologies. I just chalk it up to whatever. Let's just move on. So
Yeah. WTF, I mean, yeah, whatever, I don't care. WT whatever, $5 says, wasn't the Rosa Parks thing based on a legal experiment? Yeah, I believe the Rosa Parks thing was it's like the teaching evolution in school thing. It was an intentional challenging of the law. Yes. I believe those both were
test cases is what
test
they call
cases
them.
is the
Yeah.
word. Yes. Right. I think thinking of or trying to argue that having the vice president throw out the fucking votes is a test case is kind of absurd to me, but I don't really buy that as an argument. Val Van Gogh for $20. Thanks so much. Says if you want to go back to the 90s, you should vote Trump since the elite support he'll seek and make concessions to with Elon and other disenchanted big tech liberals who are basically 90s Dems but considered right wing now. Yeah, there is sort of this interesting coalition. It seems like Trump is trying to build around himself of those people. That's why I'd say, like, again, if it wasn't for the electors thing, I think he'd be in a lot better position in my mind. I think he'd be in a lot better position in most people's minds. So
Republicans are generally better with the economy anyway. I completely disagree with them on their framing, but I do agree with the government we should always strive to make government as efficient as possible. So I believe, in principle what they want to do. So
Elon's like a tough thing because I really want to like Elon. I'm like very grateful that he bought Twitter. I think it's
yeah.
good that we have X that has like a lot of information. There's a lot of information on X that I'm like trying to find through a search engine I can't find, but I can find it through X. So I am glad that he bought X. So I'm grateful for that. But he just keeps interacting and retweeting liars, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah, me too.
Like he just retweet. There's a clip that N Wokeness, who supposedly is Jack Posobiec, he did the most dishonest shit in the world. He took some clip from like 2019 of Kamala talking about, thinking that Trump should get kicked off of Twitter or something. Cause I think it was like a debate question that came up in the debate. and he took a clip of that and he kind of like posted it and he made it sound like intentionally made it sound like this was Kamala saying that Elon Musk should, get arrested or get banned or, so like, how it got like removed in Brazil,
Right.
he's having those problems. Like, and Wokeness posted this clip and made it seem like this is Kamala talking about going after Elon Musk now, right? And then it was hyper dishonest because, okay, number one, you watch the clip, you think she's talking about Elon Musk, and you're like, what the fuck? That's not true. You look into the clip, you find out this is an old clip, and then you go back, you read his tweet, you go, oh wait, he worded it in this hyper specific autistic way so
To
that it's
get
not
around it.
actually right. So he didn't actually say that, but he just kind of think that.
Oh
And
my
then,
God.
and I was like, oh, okay, like this is so dishonest. And Elon like retweets this shit out. And I'm like, okay, like what the fuck? He wasn't even talking about you, Elon. She was talking about Trump.
Dishonest.
It's very dishonest. And then the third level of dishonesty is that I mean, I guess Jack Posobiec's pretty smart because then you say, oh, well, why does it matter? She said Trump should get kicked off of X. That's bad, right? It's like, okay, you can disagree with that, but that's completely different than saying Elon Musk should, be arrested or should lose control of Twitter. That's a completely different level, than saying you think Trump should get kicked off Twitter. So, Kyum Madra for 250 Ps says, before the 2020 election, how would you evaluate Trump's presidency overall in terms of economics, foreign policy, immigration control, etc.? It's a good question. Before the elector stuff, I don't know if there was anything Trump did. There was only one thing that Trump did that I can remember that I really was like, this is super fucked up. And it was the trying to strong arm Zelensky into opening up investigations into Hunter Biden, or into Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. I was like, this is so fucked up. Like, this is reprehensible. So, but if we were to remove that, and we were to move the January 6th stuff, the elector stuff, I don't know if there's anything that like super stuck out to me as like so fucking horrific that was like really like a big deal or something.
I loved my Trump tax cut, obviously. And
Right.
I've heard that the Trump tax cuts for the middle class are expiring, but the ones for the rich people are still remaining in place, which makes me just seethe.
Yeah,
That's
like
so fucked up.
yeah, like judging Trump, his presidency, obviously that's super fucked up. But I like the idea. I don't think it works, but I like the idea behind the price transparency thing
Oh yeah, yeah.
for hospitals. So without those two things, I don't think his presidency was like crazy bad or anything. But see,
Yeah.
that just goes to show you, you shouldn't like a lot of times. I think Trump is kind of like a Greek mythological figure. Like if he just was not doing this like horrible, like anti-immoral, like this very immoral stuff to try to win again, he would have been in so much of like a better position to win the next election, ironically. So Thal for $20. Thanks so much. Says A team is Trump team. S class supports the acolyte old man child sniffer. Wow, well, there you go.
Why did he throw the acolyte in there?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I guess just because it's bad. So
It's funny. It is
right.
funny.
It is
Look,
funny.
and I'm not. Don't count on me to vote for Trump.
Yeah, you guys missed at the beginning of the stream. Adam said he's leaning Kamala, so better watch out.
I don't. It's so weird that I honestly don't know if she's gonna even give enough information to, which is bad. Like then she's obviously hiding something. Like if
Right.
she's not making her policies clear, if you don't really know what you get with Kamala, like fuck that. At least with
It,
Trump, like warts and all, right? You know what you're getting.
it would be interesting if we went from the mystery box of Biden of like who's actually in charge to the mystery box of Kamala. No one even knows what the fuck she stands for.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but I think a lot of these, I think she's going to be asked a lot of these questions at the debate, and she might not answer it, but the not answering it would be very, telling in and of itself. So at least see her be pressed on these questions.
yes. I mean, the thing that I like about Kamala is the 3 million homes. Like I'm skeptical. Like just the fact that someone is talking about the supply side of the equation
Mm-hmm.
is good. Like obviously the thing about Trump is, banning the trans stuff in women's sports. I mean, you get something with either of the candidates. It's most of the time it's like the candidates have zero overlap, right? With
Right.
each one, I mean, each one is pledging to do something about immigration, which everyone sees as a problem anyway. Each one is pledging to be, for the middle class and somewhat populist, economically, which, I mean, that's
Right.
a good thing, right?
Has Trump said? I know he said like we're gonna fix houses, but I mean, has he said anything more
Not
specific than
really,
that?
not really. But
Right.
that's why I would lean Kamala, is because
Mm-hmm.
I think the housing thing is just so much is related to that.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, a
Does
lot of
the
it.
energy policy touch housing? I'm not sure that it does.
No. Um. Not really.
And if
Some
part of the
people say
problem is,
immigration is. I don't think that's really
well,
substantive
immigration
either.
does to some extent. I mean,
To
if
some
there's like
extent, but not
3
like.
million extra
Right.
people here, but not every single immigrant gets a house. So it's not like all 3 million houses are being occupied by one immigrant.
Right. Most states aren't like doing the wacky shit California's doing. Where they're
God,
trying to
you
give
got to rub
money
it
to
in,
like
don't you?
immigrants to
And
buy houses or
it's,
whatever. Whatever that fucking wacky shit is.
it's insane.
So yeah, I know.
God, I don't want to leave California. I love it here, Sitch.
There you go. Biden is the acolyte because it's like the power of one, the power of two,
Oh,
the
yeah, there
power of
we go.
many. Because you don't like there's so many people like
Well, that
controlling.
makes sense.
So there you go. Grendel Vat for $10 says it is a legal theory that a person could resist unlawful arrest with equivalent force, but I highly advise no one to attempt to do this. Fight in the courts, not in the streets when you have the option.
True.
Look at that. The Harry Gold Show, thanks so much for the 20 Aussie bucks. Says, does Kamala replacing Biden lower the temperature on Trump's need for reelection? Now that A, he can't lose the Biden twice, and B, at least 2 consecutive one terms are guaranteed, making his one term look less of an outlier. That's a very interesting question. I think it does, but not by a lot.
Yeah, I don't either. It's a two-term status thing. That's just, and just losing. Like he's not only is he not a two-term president, he's a two-time loser.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I'd say maybe it drops it by like 10%, but you still have 90% to contend with. And yeah, like losing twice is such a huge blow.
This
So
is why he is hedging, because there's no
yeah.
way he can walk out and say, "Yeah, I lost twice." He's got to say, "I won 3 times and they stole it from me.
That's what yeah, if Trump loses,
I'm
he's gonna say
too great."
if Trump loses, he's gonna say he was a 3-term president. He won 3 times. So
How much did
get
he
ready for that.
pay Eric Weinstein to go out there and spin the narrative that that the deep state is the one that doesn't want Trump to win? Like he's basically just playing into Trump's hands.
I don't I don't agree with Eric, but I don't think he I know you're joking. I don't think Eric was paid or anything by Trump. So
Oh, okay.
or whatever. Do you actually think he's like getting paid by Trump?
He probably offered him like
I
Secretary of
don't think
State or
so.
something.
I mean, Eric and Brett have been they've been turning more and more and more and more against quote like the establishment ever since, the what's it called? The Green
Right.
the fucking school. I want to say Greendale, but that was the school from Community. The Evergreen, ever since Evergreen College stuff, stuff obviously happened when Brett got his supposedly had his research about on mice kind of stolen from him. You know, Eric's interactions with Epstein and everything. So I mean, they've been kind of trending in a highly anti-establishment direction. So I mean, it makes sense that even though I disagree with them, I understand where they're coming from or why they hold the views that they hold. I should say, and obviously all the COVID stuff too.
Yeah. Eric
Uh,
is like out there with the deep state stuff.
Stacy Pastry for $10. Thanks so much. Says it's funny that Paul takes the teenage girl method of intervening when things get a little too heated. Trust me, bro. I'm only talking to you. There you go.
Oh.
Kyle Petty for $10. Thank you. Says easy for me. Trump winning calms down his radicals in his party. Kamala winning empowers the radicals in her party. Reps need to have faith in elections again. Woke people don't need to be emboldened. No, that is a good point, Kyle. And that's a point that I've brought forward in the past or something kind of similar to that, which is, you know, I think I think the weird MAGA stuff is kind of reliant on the figurehead of Trump. And when he's gone, I don't think it's going to survive the Republican Party, where there is an issue with the woke shit. in the Democrat Party because it's not really embodied by a specific person. It's kind of this like systemic rot. So it's kind of unclear if it will go away, how it will go away, and what will that look like. So
It's a good argument. It is.
yeah, it's a good argument. M8566 for $10 says, right now I'm having trouble giving Trump a pass for posting for pictures at Arlington with a thumbs up. There's something really sick about politicizing the death of soldiers. Yeah, it's weird because like I know that the family wanted him there, so I don't like begrudge Trump for that. But the picture is weird.
It is super weird.
Like why would you be like, oh, let me take like a thumbs up at a graveyard or like for any reason? That's kind of like a weird, unless you're like an Irish wake or something and you're all drunk, it doesn't seem like a good idea. So
I'll bring up the picture.
D Nuts for $5 says, do you think the MSM narrative would be meaningfully different if Trump took your magnanimous strategy, but people rioted the Capitol anyways? It's a good question. If Trump was exactly the same, but was magnanimous on January 6th, told everyone we'll get him next time, and people still rioted, I think it would be different. I do think it would be different. Because also, presumably, if that happened, Trump would have been tweeting out like more fervently or done more to be like, get the National Guard there or something. I think it would be different. There would still be a lot of people on the left. Don't get me wrong, to be like MSNBC, still be crazy. A lot of people on the left would still be crazy, but I do think it would be completely. I think the January 6th would be conceived of a very differently, and I think, and more importantly, not in the mainstream media, but in like the moderate swing independent voters' minds. I think it would be perceived as very differently. So,
I'm not sure if this is a different angle on the Trump photo, but if you notice the one that I brought up, every single person in this photo is really smiling like inappropriately. Like,
oh yeah, no, everyone is. That's why it's weird. That's why it's a weird photo.
Nobody in this photo. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm hanging out with the president. Look at this.
That's why I don't necessarily hold it against Trump because they're all smiling, but it is weird. Like the optics of it are so bad. I don't know. I'm very like to be a fly on the wall to figure out like how this photo came to pass like this would be interesting.
Yeah. And they want Trump to win. So
of course.
And they're invested in him winning because they lost their kid and they obviously want to blame someone, and Biden fucked up when he withdrew. So
of course. See, but this is part of why this is again why I don't believe the 10D Trump theory here. Like if Trump was like really the super smart persuader Scott Adams thinks he was, that would have been a picture of them all like very sternly saluting the headstone or something, right? So that when the Democrats complain about it, it looks like extra bad.
Yeah, totally. But the saluting thing I think would be weird, but they could have very serious like.
Well, saluting, looking forlorn, contemplative. I don't know.
Yeah, look, the contemplative look, yes.
Right. Laying a wreath, like just
a bunch of civilians saluting.
Right. Why
they should have done the fist.
No, what the power fist? Fuck no, it's a terrible idea. Are they doing? Are they signaling the black power? Are they like trying to rise them from the dead here? What's going on? Yeah. Joe the Mig for $10. Thanks so much. Says in 2019, Kamala argued for using executive power to confiscate semi-automatic weapons if elected in 2020. If Congress failed to pass a bill to that effect, it's not fascist, a dangerous authoritarian. Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting because I do think that's a pretty crazy position that she sort of put forward. I guess I'm assuming that's gonna come out in the debate. So I wouldn't be surprised if she kind of flip-flops on it. But that's why I don't necessarily even begrudge, Connor counterpoints for saying that he wouldn't vote for her for that basis. Because that does seem pretty like there's a difference between saying I would push Congress to try to pass a law to do something. That's very different than saying like I'm going to use an executive order to confiscate guns, a specific type of gun, which is legal. That's a pretty intense thing to do. So, but again, that's part of why I say if it wasn't for all the elector shit, Trump would be in such a better position because that would be seen as like such an egregious thing that Kamala, did. But now it just gets whataboutism to compare to elector stuff. So it kind of loses its weight.
And I want to be bad so badly. And I'm trying so hard not to.
Why? What are you doing?
I'm just keep thinking. I'm like, how much does Progressive Victory pay to get Connor to change his vote based on this?
Terrible.
Like, what is the cost? How much is that?
Wow, awful.
What? Look, I'm thinking of it like as a business
As a business, I'm
proposition.
a businessman. Yeah. Saswato sent for 500 yen. Says, I come from India, which has multi-party system, which often leads to small but highly corrupt local politicians to be kingmakers, leads to many issues. Well, there you go. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's a problem.
It's interesting too, because like for everyone's hating of the federal government, the local, like your state government and your local city government is like generally like 100 times more corrupt than the federal government is substantially. So I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because the federal government has a lot more eyes on it or what, but it seems to be the case. I think it's just the eyes thing. Like the more power there is, the more eyes are on. So everyone's kind of looking at the federal government. Everyone's ignoring like your local city doing all sorts of shady shit.
Yeah, terrible, isn't it?
Eric Diode for 5 Canadian says, does Mongolia not arresting Putin a sign that international law is complete bullshit? I'm going to be real. I don't even know what you're talking about. Did Putin travel to Mongolia and people were like saying that they should arrest him or something? I didn't even know that that was a thing.
Yeah, I didn't
Mongolia
either.
ignores an international warrant for Putin's arrest, giving him a red carpet welcome. Well, I mean, I guess it does then. I guess it completely means. I mean, we all knew it was bullshit, right? Like we all know it's aspirational. It's not like a real thing. So
Hmm.
could you
Hopefully
imagine
they're
if
not
Mongolia?
NATO or anything. Like if we
No,
don't,
they're in the ICC though. So.
yeah, look, if we don't have leverage over these countries, they can do stuff like that. So
Well, I guess they could get kicked out of the ICC or
yeah, I
whatever
would kick them
organization it's
out.
called.
Why not? I wonder if they have any loans we could call them up on.
I don't know anything about fucking Mongolia. What our relationship with them is. Could you imagine if Mongolia arrested Putin? That'd be kind of hilarious. Russia, like, well, actually, what would happen? That's so interesting. Would Russia even care to get him back, or would someone
Oh, they'd be
be
happy to
so?
see him gone.
Yeah, like, would some number two person in Russia be so like thirsty to seize power that they would be like they'd be like, we're gonna do everything we can, we're gonna nuke Mongolia, blah blah blah, and then they just do nothing, right? Because they really just want to retain power.
Yeah.
That would be super interesting. Deej Nuts for $5 says, Adam, Trump has stated he will cut regulations and red tape that holds back construction. How does Kamala plan to build 3 million homes, more, quote, projects?
Yeah, look, I I would love to see where Trump says that. Like Trump really hasn't come out with any kind of detailed plan anyway. And he hasn't announced the goal. He hasn't said, "Look, houses are too expensive and we need to build more homes." So,
Mm-hmm.
and if there is the CNBC did a report on this and was saying that the consolidation in the home builders is part of the problem because obviously they benefit from housing prices being high because obviously they make
Mm-hmm.
more money, like high profits, less work. So is Trump really going to cut regulation if that's the problem? Like to break up the home builders? No, he's not going to do that. Like he's
Right.
talking about cutting regulation so that the home builders can go build more. But if the bottleneck is really the home builders really don't care, like they're in collusion with the local governments because they want to keep housing prices high, Trump's not going to fix that.
Yeah, that report was super interesting because they were saying that, like, basically, in a lot of these states, there's these massive monopolies on home builders and just all sorts of property development.
Yeah.
And I think they were saying something like in Florida, it was like, I don't know if it was all Florida, if it was just in like Miami or Tampa or one of the big cities. They were saying something like 80% of like new projects were under the management of like one fucking company, which is kind of totally insane.
Well, they
So,
do. And they also don't. I mean, if you think about cars, like cars cater, they have a low end model, they have a mid model, they have a high end model, right?
mhm.
Housing, it's like, it's all high end. It's so crazy. Why aren't they building starter homes? Why aren't they building smaller homes
Right.
for poor people, right? So they can get into their first home.
Well, you could have a trifecta of collusion, which is that you have the home builders obviously want to keep prices high as possible.
Of
And they're
course.
colluding with the state, or the city,
Who
local
want the
government
taxes to be high.
who want the taxes to be high. And then they're also colluding with homeowners who want their property values to just go
Be
up and up and
high.
up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So you can have this trifecta of all these like very powerful. This is what I always said. You have a problem where you have all these groups that want to keep property high. Everyone's talking about it, but there's like a fuck ton of NIMBYism going on here. So
Yeah, look, and the reason why those home prices are so high is because they aren't building starter homes. Like as soon as they take the pressure off the market by actually building enough homes for all the buyers, like your home prices are high when you sell your home because you got like 20 buyers. Like as
right.
soon as you've got like 3 buyers, all of a sudden it's a buyer's market and home prices come down. So,
Well, Actual Justice Warrior did an interesting video today about the weird California illegal immigrants giving them money to buy homes
yeah,
thing.
I'm like terrified to watch it, but
Right. But he showed us an interesting chart. It showed, I think it was, I don't know if it was LA, or I think it was LA. It showed a chart of like low, like quote, low end, mid end, and high end houses. And it shows that like the low end houses have actually increased in price faster than the high end ones.
exactly, because everyone's poor and there's like 100 bidders for each home.
Right.
It's like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, something needs. But look, this is at least Kamala is saying, look, we need to build 3 million homes. Yes, that is the problem. I don't know what the solution is because, like we said, it could be this collusion from all 3 of these. Not like planned collusion or anything, but just all the incentives align with these 3
Right.
different parties to make
Right.
it this way. And to deal with that, I mean, if Trump knows what the problem is, he might try to attack it, but I'm not certain that he is. And I would like it if he came out and said, look, we're going to build 3 million. Kamala wants to build 3 million homes. I want to build 5 million homes. Like, okay, I'm voting for Trump.
Yeah, and I don't know if I really buy, I don't know how much I buy like the regulation stuff because I know like in Florida, we have all sorts of like very intense regulations for new homes because of the hurricanes. And yet they're still building like crazy. Like these things still come up like there's like every like property values keep increasing. Like I just see so much building, you know, in South Florida. And it's just like, so I'm like, okay, well, obviously, even besides all the regulations, they're still building like crazy. They're still raking in the
Hurricane
money.
front property.
Right. But then I saw another video that was talking about how like so much of they said that they think in Florida there's going to be some massive like condominium collapse coming in the next like 5 to 10 years because apparently there's some big claim about like most condominiums are not up to snuff or something with their regulatory standards. So I don't know. I don't know what that would look like, but I mean it'll be, I guess that's the thing. If you're going to have either Trump or Kamala say that they're going to break up, these housing monopolies and they're going to have to, because they can't force a state to build or a city to build more houses. They just can only try to incentivize them to do so. So they're gonna have to either carrot and stick them and basically try to threaten to withhold funding from the cities or give funding to the cities if they build more homes or something. So
Right.
kind of like a secondary process, unfortunately.
People who bring up the immigration thing tied to building new homes, do you really think illegal immigrants are buying up the housing stock? Do you really think they're big competitors for new homes? Sitch, what do you think?
Well, this is why I said the argument was ridiculous in the first place. Because it's like, on one hand, I'm supposed to believe that the illegal immigrants are so poor that they're draining all of our social safety nets. And that the other hand, I'm supposed to believe that they're buying up all the homes. I mean, it doesn't really make sense to me.
It doesn't make a lot of sense at all. Yeah.
Right. So, I don't think so. I mean, I would wager that in certain areas of the country where there's like low end housing and lower income neighborhoods, then yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
with
they're
that.
driving up rents.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Right. But are they driving up it for like majority of the country that's not in like these very select areas? No, obviously not. It doesn't even really make sense. So
I think we can look, I'm all in favor of doing something about immigration. I think everyone
Right.
is at this point, except for
Yeah.
maybe Hassan Piker, but
right.
so we can separate the two issues. We don't have to bring up immigration every time we're talking about housing.
Yeah, yeah. M8566 for $2 says, "Are you guys going to cover Rings of Power?" We should.
We talked
probably.
about it a little bit.
Yeah,
I mean,
should.
we can do a stream on it on our second channel. I want to get your feedback. I mean, we don't necessarily have to watch the debate, the Peter Boghossian street epistemology video, but I want to cover that. And then Tim Pool made a video about the petrodollar that's pretty insane that I want to watch. And
Okay.
you want to watch, there was something else you want to watch
I want
too,
to talk
right?
to you about the whole price gouging thing again.
The price gouging thing. Yeah, we got bunches of stuff to talk about this week. So I don't know if you guys are getting tired of election stuff, but I mean, the next big thing is the 10th, which is a week from today, is the debate. So mark it on your calendar. I remember we didn't stream the Biden Trump debate. I basically was like live tweeting it, and I set up a stream and was talking to you guys in the chat while it was going on. And I just the whole time was like, oh my fucking God, I can't believe this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully it's just that crazy, right? And then we'll jump on afterwards and we'll be like, what the fuck was that?
I know.
So,
well, we could always stream and just like have it be like, okay, we're not gonna like, you can be in the chat and we'll be here, but you guys watch it on like the YouTube feed that it's on. That's like the legal feed without us stealing the content, you know?
right. Yeah. Well, that's really bad playback content. And I think it's better just to have good playback content.
Yeah, maybe that is. Yeah, I see.
So I mean, we can set up a stream that starts after it's over and still be in the chat. Like
you're right. Okay, that's
just in the chat talking as we're watching it with other people. So
okay. I've only seen the first 2 episodes of Rings of Power.
So you watched? I only watched the first one, and we talked about it a little bit on the Sunday stream.
We did. I think the third. I didn't get to the part. Probably some part. I think in the third episode where they try to make the orcs like humanized or something, and everyone's like losing their shit about it. So
I
we'll
am
probably talk about it.
10,000,000% against that. So
yeah, it's a terrible idea.
So weird.
It's very weird. There's a lot of weird decisions happening in this season. So.
Why does every single piece of content have to be about slavery and oppression? Why? Sitch?
You know why. You know why.
Oh, I know.
Because Kamala Harris, that's why. That's why you should vote for Trump. Got to get wokeness out of our Lord of the Rings.
Oh, totally.
That was a joke. Stug for $2 says, I think 1D chess is actually the hardest to win. There you go. That's true. That would be very difficult. 1D chess?
I can't imagine.
How you even play that, yeah.
Just all the pieces move in one direction.
One direction. Joel Kills Time for $10 says, I can see not voting for Trump because of January 6th and other stuff, but voting for Kamala after Tulsi's takedown of her in 2015 makes me question your intelligence. I don't read books, and no, that's dumb. There you go. Listen, I'm going to be honest. I don't even remember what Tulsi said in that takedown. It's been so long since I've seen the clip. So maybe we should go back, actually. I'm curious. Before this next debate, I should go back. We should both go back. We should watch Kamala debating Pence and watch, not on stream, but just on our own, watch Kamala debating Pence and watch Kamala, primary debate. So we can kind of like assess where she was and where she is now.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I actually enjoyed rewatching those Obama speeches.
Right.
So I don't remember the debates though. He debated Romney, right? And John McCain.
D Nuts for $5 says home builders have a monopoly because they're the only ones that can afford to comply with regulatory overhead. I can't afford a DIY build due to them. You know what?
Yes, that's a
good point. I retract what I said earlier. That is a good point. Yeah, if there are just a shit ton of regulation, maybe that could be why. Because in Florida, there are so much regulations because of the hurricanes that could be why the monopoly was able to form in the first place. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, there are all these small contractors who'd probably build like 10 homes a year if they could do it. Yeah. Which is just insane.
You could have a situation, I don't know about in other states, you could definitely have a situation in Florida that's kind of fucked because Florida has a massive problem that our government has never addressed, which is that getting home insurance in Florida has been a huge problem because ever since, I think it was in 1992 with Hurricane Andrew, all the insurance companies basically fled the state, or most of them fled the state. And so you kind of have this situation where in order to sort of, and the government's kind of been like trying to give insurance and all those other things, in order to try to like make it so people can buy home insurance, one of the ways they do that is they pass all these regulations to try to make the homes safer and more sturdy during hurricanes. But then that creates the problem of making it too expensive for people to build homes, except for these large places. So it's kind of like this problem that like came into being not intentionally, but kind of through an accidental series of steps. And I don't really know how you fix that because you can't just start cutting regulations because then, everyone gets their houses blown away in a hurricane and dies or loses all their shit. So obviously the answer is Trump should come out and say, I know how to solve the housing crisis in Florida. We're going to nuke the hurricanes.
Yeah,
That's
a good. That's a awesome solution.
Fate Morality for Joe says new homes will just be bought up by BlackRock. Well, it's funny that you say that because I could believe. I mean, and I think Kamala actually didn't Kamala make some statement or her campaign make some statement about trying to prevent companies like BlackRock from buying up new homes and renting them out to people? Or did I?
Oh yeah, they're all over that.
And
Kamala's going to do that.
If that rumor is true, that Trump wants to put Larry Fink, CEO of BlackRock, into the government, obviously Trump's not going to do that then. So that'd be kind of fascinating. The Wooster for $10, thanks so much, says Gaslighters called James Lindsay a schizo when he said Kamala's unburdened by what has been, quote, was Marxist dog whistle. He's been vindicated by Eric Weinstein in his interview with Chris Williamson. Yeah, I saw that clip where Eric agrees with that. But listen, I'm going to be real with you guys. I have not anywhere near seen enough evidence by either that clip or James Lindsay that even merits my level of comfort to say that Kamala is unburdened by what was clip is some kind of secret Marxist dog whistle. I haven't seen that. So
yeah, she just thinks it's profound.
I'd be interested because I think I have to go back and find it. I know for one of the streams, I think I found when she originally said it, and it was like in a college graduation ceremony, and it didn't seem to be Marxist, at least in that speech. It's just kind of about not letting the past historical oppressions of like racism hold you back or something. So I have to see something pretty convincing in my mind to sort of get me down the pathway that it's like a secret Marxist dog whistle, especially when people point to her father was a Marxist professor. Her father left the family when she was 4, so I don't think he was teaching her Marxism when she was 4.
God, he's a
number one, right?
Deadbeat dad,
right? And I don't believe he came back into the. I could be wrong, but I don't believe he came back in the equation until she was an adult.
Was her dad unburdened by what had been?
I mean, he unburdened himself from the family, I guess. But no, it's not fair. I don't know what was going on in the family and why he left. But what was I going to say? Oh, and then I don't know. I lost the train of thought. But
That's okay.
It's okay.
That's pretty funny though.
Yeah, no, it's a funny joke. Kamala's father unburdened him.
She thinks, she thinks it's totally profound. And I mean, come on, a Marxist letting it go, a Marxist saying get over it. Let's be real here. Come on, that's not going to happen.
Oh,
like,
I know.
Hell yeah, you should bring up the 1619 project every 5 minutes.
I was going to say, it's weird because, if you look at Kamala's past, you don't see someone who seemed to be way more Marxist, leftist, and then they kind of hid their power level when they became when they entered politics. Because you see that with Bernie Sanders, right? Bernie Sanders is literally on a fucking commune. You see it with Bernie Sanders, you see it with AOC. When you look in their past, you see them to be more leftist, and then they kind of moderate when they're in politics. With Kamala, it's the exact opposite. When she was in politics, she was a lot more centrist conservative-y, and then she kind of became more woke, as being woke was what the Democrats wanted. So I don't know. I'm not ruling it out. I'm not saying she's a secret communist, but I have yet to see evidence in my mind that is sufficient. So
right.
Fate of Morality for $5 says California's passed a bill through legislation that offers assistance to illegal immigrants by covering $150,000 in down payment, which reduces housing supply. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. That's where I made a video about it. That's, if all that shit is true, that's so fucking insane. Did they pass the bill? Wait, I thought it hadn't passed. I thought it was. Oh no, it passed through legislature. Yeah, the governor hasn't talked about whether he's going to. whether he hasn't signed it yet or no, I should
Oh,
say.
okay,
So,
well that's good. Hopefully he's got a
good for
brain
you.
and is not going to sign that.
I
That's
mean,
so insane. There are people in the state paying taxes. They're going to give that tax money to illegal aliens.
what the
Get
fuck's
the
wrong? Like,
fuck out of here.
I mean, what the fuck's wrong with the California legislature that they would pass that bill? That's so wild.
Yeah, look, in 100, like, imagine how much home you can buy for 150K in Texas. Jesus.
That is pretty fucking disgusting. If that's all true, that's like horrifically disgusting. So
Yeah,
it
it
doesn't
makes
even
me
make
think it's
sense.
fake.
I know, but I don't know. I've seen. I mean, I've seen articles talking about it. I've seen left wing publications talking about it. They don't have incentive to lie about it. So, it seems true, but it
That's
seems
like
totally
half a
crazy.
house in Texas. The average house price in Texas is 306,000.
Right. It's called the California Dream for All.
Oh my God. Everyone's fucking leaving California. They're like, oh, we got all these empty houses now.
I got to give them to the illegal
Fill them
immigrants.
up.
Right.
They're just trying to destroy the state. God, this is so bad.
Is it specifically for undocumented immigrants? Because that's like fucking wild. If that's
Yeah.
the case. That is so crazy.
Yeah.
Is it? I'm gonna look into this because I am curious. Like, is it specifically for undocumented immigrants, or is it just undocumented immigrants can apply for it? So,
Hmm. Hmm. All right. I guess I'm
Okay.
reading super chats now. Where are we?
You can if you want, if you have the capacity to.
I do. I can read.
Can you? I don't think you can. Stuck for $2 says Girl Next Gondor has good token lore videos. Nice, I'll check it out.
I like the lore
Sketch
videos.
for $5 says forget the orc family. Let's talk about how Sauron became an evil flubber with the power of the monster from Stranger Things season 3. Yeah, that was that. Listen, I could honestly forgive Sauron becoming evil flubber if he hadn't died like a bitch. I mean, he literally gets stabbed by a crown and then shanked by a bunch of orcs like a prison stabbing. It was so pathetic.
It
I was
was,
like,
yeah.
what is this?
He had to fight with his hands. I thought he was a freaking sorcerer.
Though I will say, the only part of the second episode I think I liked was when Sauron turned into his like deceiver form for Celebrimbor. I'm like, oh, he finally looks like what you think he should look like. So I was like,
Did he turn into
finally.
the elf? I wasn't watching. I was
He
drawing.
turned into like a sexy elf guy. And I'm like, okay,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
what he should look like, right? He should be like, very attractive to deceive people. But,
Yep.
I mean, but even then, it's like, I just feel like it's so lazily written. Like having a story about Sauron kind of going around tricking people to like make the rings and it be from Sauron's perspective could be so fascinating. That could be such a good television show. Like you just write this like evil character. We all know he's evil, but he's like tricking everyone on the screen, and you're like, oh, this is so interesting. He's so tricksy. Like look at him doing all these like schemes and plots. So fascinating. How's he gonna do this? Oh, it's kind of like Death Note. You're watching like the Death Note, you're like watching the series from the bad guy's perspective, and like you're like, how is he going to get out of this scrape? How is he going to like manipulate people to do this? And it's very interesting to watch that. And they just kind of drop the ball, and it's just very lazily written. It's just like I feel like so much of TV shows nowadays, The Acolyte, this show, it's just like they write it in this weird way of they just want the actors or the characters to get from scene to scene. It's like they're writing it towards some kind of end goal as opposed to writing it towards like making each scene interesting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, big time.
Which is a huge mistake. So
I like that movie Nightcrawler, and that guy's a complete. I mean, that's one of those evil protagonists, but it's just so interesting because everything is like a negotiation to that guy, and he's like an amazing negotiator. So you're kind of on board just in that same kind of way. Like, how is he going to talk his way out of this scrape? It's just fascinating. Yeah. So,
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, American Psycho, same thing.
Yep.
Breaking Bad, Walt is basically the bad guy for a lot of the series, and you like to watch him. So,
yep. But they're not doing any of that with this, which, I mean, that's kind of what they want, what they said they wanted to do with the Acolyte too, but they completely missed, like, crap the bed on the whole thing.
Right. Lou Silver for $5 says try getting home insurance in Los Angeles. I just went through it. Really? Why is it so bad? I don't know what's going
Yeah,
on in
they're
Los Angeles.
when you were saying the insurance thing in LA, they're doing the same thing with insurance. Like car insurance is going way up, like 30% higher. Home insurance
Really?
is
Wow.
going way up. I haven't got mine yet, but
Is it because of the fires or something? Or is it
I
just
don't look. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on. So I guess the insurance companies are losing a bunch of money or something. I don't know. I haven't really looked into it, but I did talk to our insurance agent, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, get ready. Your insurance is going to go up like 30%." Like, oh my god, for real?
right?
Yeah.
Eagle Docs for $2 says unburdened is textbook unconstrained vision.
Which I disagree. Like, unburdened by not what has been, but unburdened by what is possible is unconstrained vision, right? Unburdened by human nature is unconstrained vision. But she's saying unburdened by the past.
And specifically when she said it, I mean, it seems like she's saying it kind of like a,
She's saying let it
oppression,
go.
like the oppression of black people and stuff. So
She's saying let it go, right?
right. So I
Let
thought
go of your
it seemed like
pain and
she's always said
suffering.
it. So
Unburdened
I
is
haven't heard
that's
her.
more like forgiveness. That's more like Christianity than that's turn the other cheek.
Well, it seemed like she was more saying like just to not let it, not let. I mean, it's kind of funny because when she was originally saying it, I think she was saying it kind of in an anti-woke perspective because she was kind of saying it like, don't let, the past racism, hold you back today, right?
Yeah, it's an
And
Obama
strive
message.
forward. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously she could, I'm sure it's changed as she's changed and become more woke to mean different things, but
She wants more woke voters.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just saying I have not seen it yet. Sug for $5 says, well, considering a token's lore, he took hundreds of years as Anatar. Yeah, it is obviously. Thank you for the $2 follow up. I thought that, and I'm like, oh, I bet you this is going to be like a hyper time compressed version of events because obviously this is not going to be a situation where someone's spending 100 years walking around making the elves. I mean, what making the rings and everything. So that really, it's funny because it's kind of just like with the Fury Road Mad Max movie. They have a very interesting villain story that should be what the story is about, but for maybe woke reasons, maybe other reasons, they make it the story center on a female protagonist that is just not anywhere near as interesting as a villain, and like you should just not focus on at all. She should be just like a random side character.
Yep. The boring side character. Why do they always do that?
They got to make it a woman, I guess.
It's like I want Optimus Prime to be the protagonist, right?
There you go.
Not
Yes.
some fucking dumb kid.
Exactly.
I want Dr. Manhattan to be the protagonist. Right?
100%.
I want the fucking cool guy.
You don't want that's the Neil Gaiman syndrome where he makes like a super interesting characters and then he makes the boring characters the protagonist. You're like, stop, no,
Well,
go back to the interesting character.
It comes from the idea that it's got to be the everyman so the audience can empathize with the plight of the protagonist. And I'm like, no.
No one wants that. Yeah, fuck that.
Yeah. Haven't we moved past that?
I don't even think it's true. I mean, I never bought that idea whatsoever. You can empathize and understand or find interesting like all sorts of, Dr. Manhattan or Dream or all sorts of crazy, characters. So
yep.
The Rooster for $10 says the solution to high house prices is mass deportation, taking dual citizens' assets, and ceasing legal immigration. Building will just increase crime and further rip the social fabric of the U.S. So, if you did all those things, if you started mass deporting, literally stealing people's dual citizens' assets and stopping all immigration. First of all, I mean, America would become a scene and become essentially what is this, like communism? We're just going to start stealing people's assets because they're a dual citizen, which was legal until, a few days ago. That's going to be a massive infringement on people's rights.
That's crazy.
that's going to send the economy into a total spin. And if we cease all illegal immigration in the country, well, people in America aren't having kids, so the economy is going to crash because we're going to have a fucking population decline. So I don't think that's a viable solution to the economic problems that we're suffering at the moment. Fondue for $5 says listening to lore videos on Morgoth is really interesting too. Wish we could see the creation of dragons and Balrogs. All those battles would be dope. That would be super cool. Though it is weird they had all that legal constraint about what they can use and what they can't use. So Equishadox for $2 says leftist considered all possible unconstrained. I mean, we're not disagreeing with that. The question is, does Kamala embody that idea or not? So Stug for $2 says, I'm upset. Don't be upset, Stug.
Yeah, don't be upset.
Don't be upset. Just go back and watch the original Lord of the Rings, okay? Just let it wash over you. Arithmus for $2 says, I love you guys, I really do, but you must know this is utterly ridiculous to suggest the media would thoroughly and accurately report on voter fraud. If it favored Trump, there's no scenario where that would happen. I disagree. So I don't know what to tell you. It depends on what the voter fraud was and what the
authorities got involved and everything. I mean, geez, be kind of hard to cover up.
It's the same thing like the Hunter Biden laptop. You can say, well, there's no way they'd ever report on that after they all said it was fake. Well, they all did, right? They have to. You can force all these organizations can be forced in reporting on stuff. Now they might try to downplay it at first, but the truth will prevail. Arithmus for $4 says, Sitch, I don't think Kamala replacing Biden was a coup, but you have to acknowledge that Democrats denied a fair primary process by allowing Biden to essentially run an uncontested incumbency in the primary. The average Democrat that you know personally may not have known about Biden's cognitive decline. They can't tell me that the DNC leadership had no idea what was going on. I don't know the answer to that question. We have talked about this on stream before. How many people knew of Biden's decline? It's unclear. I don't have a problem with people it's like, let's just say theoretically, just for the sake of the conversation, like, yes, everyone in the DNC knew Biden was like fucking toast. And they all said, well, we're not going to push it because we think we'll have better chance of Biden winning than if we try to like push him out and he resists and it causes like this huge clusterfuck and, blah, blah, blah. It's going to tear the party apart and Trump's going to win, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Which I assume would be their headcanon scenario if they're like hiding the secret. If that's the case, then like 100%, call the DNC, horrible, shitty, lying scumbag pieces of shit for like hiding the information from the American people, which they very well may be. And I think Biden's staff are all horrible, shitty people for hiding from the American people. And I think Kamala's fucking piece of shit for lying about it too. So yeah, I don't have any problem whatsoever with criticizing the Democrat Party or the Democrat elites that seem to know what was going on from, or we assume knew what was going on from hiding the information from the American public. So
the best argument that they had to know was the debate schedule. It is highly unusual to have a presidential debate before both candidates have taken the nomination. So just the fact that they had that debate super early on.
That's a good point.
Says everything. Point, yeah. It really does. They knew what was up. They knew what was up.
Right. That is a very good point. So I am curious as to what they knew and when they knew it. And was it one of these situations where they just but here's the thing, okay, if you're who was the one pushing for wasn't it Biden's campaign that was pushing for the
that's what Trump said. Look, Trump said Biden's campaign was pushing for it and that Trump basically just agreed to everything, gave them what they wanted.
Right. But see, that doesn't imply though that it was, it's possible that maybe someone in Biden's campaign knew, maybe for all we know, his chief of staff was secretly trying to sabotage Biden, right?
Yeah.
Because he knows that it's bad and he's trying to get him to pull out. So he does it the only way he can through the debate. Because it's the DNC is not the people that kind of control the date of the debate. It's Biden's staff specifically. So
yeah, look, somebody pressured somebody else and was like,
right.
We got to do the right thing here. We got to get this guy in front of American people before he takes the nomination and we're all fucked. Like,
Right,
so
right.
there was some negotiation going on because look, that never happens. They usually have 3 debates. They have them after they take the nomination and before the election.
But why would Biden agree to it? That's kind of the weird question.
This is why I think they had to tell him. They had to pressure him to do that. And the only pressure that they really have is to say, we're going to 25th Amendment you, right? That's the only real pressure that they have.
I don't know, all the way that this story has kind of unfolded. Like, if we had a scenario where Biden did the debate and he, bombed as he did, and then we see like this very quick, like next week he gets replaced, boom, right? Like, it seemed like if it seemed like all the pieces were like aligned so that when he failed in debate, it just kind of like slid in, I would kind of be more inclined to agree with this idea. But that's not really what happened. Biden did the debate, he bombed, he fucking held on as tightly as he could for like 2 weeks. People were like losing their mind. Like, this is like becoming this huge issue. And then we basically get this story. We don't know if it's true, but we get a story that basically Nancy Pelosi or some other Democrats, she denies it to high heavens, but Nancy Pelosi, some other Democrats like going and throwing the 25th Amendment him, which if this conversation had happened before the debate, I feel like things would have happened a lot more smoother, a lot differently.
This is how it took place before the debate. And it probably was Nancy Pelosi, since she's the one that ultimately threatened him to step down. So they probably said, we have concerns about your age.
Mm-hmm.
We want to do a debate early on. Biden agrees, says, look, I'm going to kill it. I'm in the prime of my life here. I'm going to destroy it. Right? They have the debate. His perception is, it wasn't that bad. Their perception is, oh my God, we're all going to die. So, but that's got to play out. Like, he's basically saying, it wasn't that bad. I'm doing fine. I'll do some more interviews. And they're saying, no, it unfolded exactly how we thought it would. You fucking bombed, and now we got to move ahead. So this is going to take time to play out over the next few weeks, right? And that's how it ultimately does play out. But I think whoever put him up to doing that first debate, like, anticipated this would be the outcome. Why else would you do that debate?
I agree with the last thing you said, that whoever put him up this debate anticipated this to be the outcome, right?
Yes.
So I'm saying, I wonder if it was really his chief of staff or someone in his campaign who was like, oh shit, like, this isn't going to work. Though, what I do question, the element that is like question, which is sort of the broader part of the conversation, is I don't believe, because it doesn't really make sense to me, the idea that like if the DNC or his staff or whoever, right, the deep state, the DNC, any of these people, if they knew that Biden was completely mentally incompetent for like a year, 2 years, or whatever, this thing that happened that like rushed here at the end wouldn't have happened. They would have just forced him to not run again in January or last year.
They could have been trying that all along, though.
I don't think so. There's been zero, with all the stories that have been leaking like crazy, coming out like crazy about Nancy Pelosi, 25th Amendment, with all these stories like leaking like a fucking sieve. Not a single story has ever leaked that said like, oh, they've been trying to actually pressure Biden for like a year and he just didn't do it. Which you think that would have come out if, when all that pressure was on Biden, all these stories were leaking, you would think something like that would have come out.
He said he was only running for one term, that he wouldn't run for re-election, and then kind of changed that anyway. So,
right. Because if you're looking at it from the perspective of the DNC or the evil deep state or whatever, you're thinking like, okay, we want Biden, we want to win. We don't want Trump to win. So we want like a very smooth primary process where there's a completely normal Democrat primary process where the Democrats, voter electorates, choose who they think is the strongest contender against Trump. They got it right, against Trump the first time with Biden. I got it right, I guess the second time. They got it wrong the first time with Hillary. They got it right with Biden. So, we'll let them do it. We don't want any sort of weird monkey shenanigans to possibly like tar the process. Because the only other explanation is like, if the DNC or the deep state or whoever specifically wants Kamala so bad, and it's like, why? Well, there's nothing very
Well,
special
I'm
about
not saying.
Kamala.
Look, I'm not saying that at
No, I
all.
know you're not saying that, but
Yeah.
I'm saying like the people that are sort of kind of alluding to this concept is like, why the fuck would they like Kamala's
No,
like this kind
look,
of empty suit? Like it doesn't make any sense that they're just so fucking jonesing for Kamala.
it is kind of funny that Gavin. It appears that Gavin Newsom wanted to be the anointed one instead
He
instead of
100% did. He
Kamala,
100% wanted it. Yeah.
which I thought was odd because I thought they'd throw it to Kamala just because nobody else wanted it, but I guess other people
I
did want
told
it.
you, I
So
said
yeah,
no fucking way. I said no, they're in it to win it. They're gunning for it.
yeah. I wonder if they went to Gavin and were like, "Listen, you're a straight white male. There's no way we can put you up." What a oh my god, this is
I
the
wouldn't be
Democratic
surprised.
Party of
Yeah.
today.
That conversation very well could have happened. And that
Oh,
could have
I'm
been
sure
part
it
of what
did
made him
happen.
salty. Yeah.
I'm sure it did happen because Kamala was vice president. Like they were just we got ourselves a optical nightmare here if we put you up and pass over the black woman.
Because like if you're like the people, I think people give too much power to like they have in their heads they give too much power to DNC, but like if the Democratic operatives or whatever, what their end goal that they want is that they want a good, effective Democrat president who's going to win more terms, and then the party's going to win more down the road. Like that's always
Yeah.
the goal, is to win more elections. So
At
if
least
we have the situation where Kamala seems to be so incompetent that they're literally hiding her from the fucking media, right?
Right.
Why would the elites pick this retard, right? Would they have loved to pick Gavin Newsom or Shapiro or any of these people that could talk, right? And if they want now, doing that at this end game could be difficult because it's kind of like, oh, you're snaking it from Kamala. She's, a woman of color, blah, blah, blah. But if they had Biden way back in January last year, say he's not running and they had a normal primary process, Kamala would have probably got fucking annihilated in
she
the
would have got
primaries.
destroyed, yeah. Josh Shapiro would be the candidate right now. But look,
Probably.
it is Biden hanging on to power by his fingernails basically. That's what it's got to
Yeah.
be. Look, it's so funny because it is the ideology and they were thinking, "Oh, well, we can't pass up the black woman otherwise we'll lose voters." But
Probably.
I don't buy that though. Look, I think if Josh Shapiro was a candidate right now, oh god, he'd be way up in the polls. He'd be destroying it.
I know. I
Everyone
100%
would be
agree with
like,
you.
"Okay, enough of the woke stuff. We want to win."
Right. I agree with you completely. Like that they believed it, like the Democrats believed it, but I don't think the country would care
I
if
don't
they
think they
got rid
would
of
either.
Kamala
They'd be
for
like, "Oh my
Josh
god,
Shapiro
this
for
guy's like Obama reincarnated in a white dude."
a white Jew who's really Obama. What's going on here?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
look, the conspiracy theories would run amok, right?
Oh, they would definitely.
Turned out Bill Clinton was the first black president. Obama was the first Jew president.
Oh,
Salah for $2 says, as someone who's not voting for president, what's your response to quote, if you don't vote, you don't have a right to complain? By the way, Eastman's argument that depleting the majority electorate count lower than 270 would throw it back to House is not in agreement with the Heritage Guide to the Constitution or the letter of it. It says a majority of electors appointed, meaning if states are thrown out, the majority threshold goes down. He said that just to own Lawrence Tribe and use his argument against him. What a shitty little bitch. RFK Jr. has unfavorability rating of 41 to 45% due to those animal stories, so it wouldn't be a good idea to make him VP. Well, let me answer those in the chronological order. My response is the don't vote, you don't have a right to complain. If someone doesn't vote because they're like too lazy to give a shit, then I would agree with that, right? Like if you're too lazy to care about politics, then yeah, then fuck you. You don't have a right to complain about anything. If you're not going to like even try, then yeah, sure. Then I don't think you have a right to complain. So if you're
that's
like
a
a
great
weirdo,
answer.
like if you're like a weirdo political pundit, autistic journalist or something, like I try to be, I think it's a completely different situation. So obviously I'm trying to do it to retain some level of writer control over my elephant.
Oh, let it go, Sitch. Just get triggered. It's fun.
No, you're right. I forgot about that element of the Eastman argument. That's a good point about how that is unconstitutional in the first place because it's just the majority of electors appointed, which is kind of funny. Um, you know, I'm glad you said that about RFK Jr.'s unfavorability rating. Well, I guess the question is, because that's a good point. That's definitely a good point. If RFK Jr. has all these like fucking wacky stories that make people not like him because he's cutting off the heads of whales or something, that's a completely good argument against putting him on the VP ticket. But even with a 41 to 45% unfavorability rating, isn't that still less than JD Vance? Isn't JD Vance's unfavorability rating even higher than that?
Oh, that's crazy.
I don't know the answer to that question. I thought it was very high. I thought it was in like the 80s or 70s or something, but maybe I'm mistaken. So, but obviously, if RK Jr. has a higher unfavorability than JD Vance, that would, squash the idea of replacing him. I don't think Trump is going to replace him with RFK, by the way, at this point. I think if he was going to do it, he would have done it already. No, actually, you know what? You were saying that maybe he should do it after the. No, we were saying if he was going to do it, he'd have to do it before the debate. He can't do it after the debate unless he crushes it in the debate, which then why would he do it? So it doesn't make any sense. So I don't think it's going to happen. Rhythms for $2 says, Sitch, I don't know how you could say that Kamala was moderate conservative in her political career. Everything I read about her voting record in the Senate suggests that she has always been hard left. Well, to be clear, I was talking about when she was like a DA specifically. I wasn't talking about when she was a senator. I don't know what her voting record was when she was a senator. So, but I should look into that to see to justify, and I will do that because I should look into that because if she has a voting record once she gets to the Senate of being just hard left, that would definitely play more into the idea of her being maybe a secret socialist. So it's definitely something to look into. It's weird. I can't that JMac super chat you sent me. I don't actually see it on the list, so I don't know why I got like deleted.
Yeah, $50 super chat too. Kind of weird.
Very weird. Slug for $5 says, did you know that in one earlier version of the lore, Barine had to scrub floors for a cat? I did not know that. No, wow. That's okay. That's interesting. Or Beren. Okay, interesting. Mike Mills for $20. Thanks so much. As I agree that Trump wouldn't try to stay in office after a second term, but it's not a strong possibility that if say Trump Jr. runs in 2028, Trump would try another scheme to get his son in office. Shouldn't we be worried about it? I would say you should be worried about it if I thought Trump Jr. literally stood a ghost farts and a chance of possibly winning. So
What is this scheme? You can't just like appoint somebody president.
Well,
and they closed the loophole for the January 6th thing, which probably wouldn't have worked the first time he tried it.
right.
So
yeah, the loophole has been closed. Now I guess you could say, Trump, since he had the capacity to do the first time, his capacity to do anything, which I would agree with. I don't know exactly what he would do, but that's a good point though. If I felt like Trump Jr. had a fucking ghost farts of a chance to win, then I would be more inclined to agree with that. He's just so, he does not have like a tenth of the charisma or ability to talk the way his dad does. So it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where he goes through a primary process in 2028, wins, and then wins the general election.
there's just not really the power to be this dictatorial. People are saying it because it's good politics. It's good politics to say, oh my God, Trump is scary and he's going to take over the government and incarcerate people.
Oh, I mean, I don't know if I don't want to say like full sail, there's no power. I don't know what I don't know. I have no clue what could be imagined. Like I would have guessed the elector scheme before it happened was like a thing that someone would come up with. So
Yeah, but we agree that it wouldn't have kept Trump in office. I mean, it would have been cut off at some level.
I think the Supreme Court would have overruled it. I think
Yeah.
there's enough legitimacy in the Supreme Court to overrule it.
We're just worried about how many institutions are going to be thrown under the bus along the way.
Right.
So,
I mean, if it went through that, if the Republicans, the House signed off on it, the Supreme Court overruled it, but like one or two of the justices sided with it, I would literally say every single one of those representatives that voted for it should go to jail. Those justices should go to jail. Like that would just be wild. That'd be so amazingly divisive and destructive for this country.
I mean, the practitioner's veto is still in place. And the idea that Trump could amass enough loyalists to do any damage just seems insane to me, right?
Well, I guess another thing, if you want to talk about that from the consideration, is that Trump also seems highly ineffective as president and just in general life. So
Yeah, supposedly the whole idea behind the Project 2025 thing was that he was interviewing a bunch of loyalists to get those loyalists into positions of power in the government, right? Well, he threw them under the bus faster than anything, right?
maybe, I mean, Trump coming out against Project 2025 is very interesting because I've never heard him come out that hard against anything on the Republican side of things. So that makes me think that he honestly didn't have any sort of real connection with it and was like pissed off by it.
Right.
So,
Look, loyalty is a
or maybe it's
two-way
like an ego.
street.
Right.
Loyalty is a two-way street. Like he's got to find someone that's loyal to him, but he also has to be loyal to them. Otherwise, what's the point of their loyalty? But that's the thing
Right.
about Trump. He's not loyal to anyone.
No, he burns through people super quick.
Yeah. So look, you think these people that he's puts in these places of power so he can get his agenda, these super loyalists, as soon as he throws them under the bus, they're going to be like, oh, fuck that guy.
I wonder if the Project 2025 thing is like an ego thing too, because then it's like, oh, Trump doesn't have his own ideas. He's just following what these people tell him to say.
Oh, I'm sure that's probably a big part of it.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that could also be why he was so against the thing. Lou Silver for $5 says bearded guy earlier is obsessed relitigating 2020 ad nauseum. It's already been litigated to death. Just stop. It's over, Johnny. Yeah, I mean, well, to be fair to Rob, I don't know how him and PF Young got into that conversation in the first place, but I think PF Young kind of framed it like he wanted someone to convince him to vote for Kamala or Trump, and he got Rob to sort of convince him to vote for Trump. I think, PF Young, I think, has a lot of people on the left in his audience who were sort of like, obviously since Destiny's been pushing the January 6th button so much, they're like, you got to talk about January 6th, you got to talk about January 6th. So that's kind of why it came up. So. Fondue for $5 says, I'm reminded of George Carlin's stand-up on non-voters having more of a right to complain. I haven't seen that, but I feel like I disagree with it. Stock for $5 says, yep, and a good doggo stole the cat's collar so his girlfriend could free him. Jesus. There's a lot of wacky shit that happens in J.R. Tolkien. I don't know if it shows up in the third episode. Isn't like fucking that guy, what's his name? The guy who like sings reality into existence. Isn't he supposed to show up in Rings of Power?
Oh,
I'm assuming he hasn't shown.
Please. No.
What's that guy? I'm totally blanking what that guy's name is.
Is there really going to be singing? This turns into a musical? Oh,
well, there was singing in the second episode. They had the dwarf ladies like singing to the stone.
No way. Get the fuck out of here. Okay, I hate this now.
Right. Well, it's like, listen, it was only for like a second, okay?
Too much.
Right. But what was that guy's name? I'm totally blanking. It was totally blanking. I keep when I say Bilbo, that's obviously not the guy's name. Can't think of it. I'm sure someone chatted. Tom Bombadil, thank you. I'm assuming that hasn't happened yet in the show, because I'm assuming as soon as that character comes up, I'm gonna see like a fucking wave of just complaints on social media about it. So Lucio for $20 says peaceful transition, social norms, this country united, all too important. Very
true.
Very true. Anyway,
yeah. All right,
thank
look
you
at
guys
that.
so much for the incredibly generous donations. Thank you for watching this late at night. Thank you, Paul, PF Young, for having us. Thank you, Rob, for coming on and talking to us. I know it got heated at the end, but I do appreciate the conversation. I do appreciate 95% of the conversation. So hopefully we can talk again in the future. And
yeah, no hard
thank
feelings.
you guys for coming. Yeah, no hard feelings. And
well, hold on, we're
tomorrow.
Yeah, we're streaming at the normal time, right? We got a bunch of stuff, some videos to watch. So 11 a.m. California time and 2 p.m.
Eastern. Yeah,
Eastern. All right, back to our normal schedule.
Same kablam time, same kablam place tomorrow. So we'll see you there.
See you tomorrow. Bye, guys.
Bye.